Good afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and getting to your seats so promptly. I'm hoping that you can all hear me okay. Just give me a wave if you can hear at the back there, okay? Can. Good stuff, just about. I will talk up as much as possible. Welcome to the historic Royal Institution Lecture Theatre. It's a real pleasure to join you both in person for those of you here and also to those of you joining us virtually too. I'm Ray Salahi and I'm your host for this afternoon. I'm absolutely thrilled to join you for this afternoon's Greenhouse Startup Demo Day 2024. It's the fifth time that we've come together to celebrate the achievements of the greenhouse startups following the launch of the Greenhouse Accelerator in January 2021, which at the time was part of the new Centre for Climate Change Innovation, which, as you all know, is now known as Undaunted. And since then, 130 teams have taken part in the 12-month programme of support. And this ambitious climate positive startups that you will hear from today are all part of the fifth intake of the programme, and they are fantastic, so you're in for a real treat. Now, before we kick off, let me just briefly outline what you have in store and what you have to look forward to. So this afternoon's proceedings are going to be split into 3 sections of 5 startup pitches per section, and they will all be joined by a series of expert speakers on the latest trends in climate innovation and investment. And as ever, we ask for your participation, the audience participation. At the end of each pitch, please do keep your phones to hand, and if you haven't already switched them to silent, please do so for that. Now, our aim is to wrap up by around 5:30, at which point we will invite you to join us for networking drinks just outside the lecture theatre. You'll find some designated standing tables just through the doors out there, and if you are looking for a specific team and you're struggling to find them, just head to any of the Undaunted team who can point you in the right direction. They will be on hand throughout this afternoon and evening. Okay, just a final few housekeeping points before we get started. You'll find loos on the ground floor as you entered the building. They're assigned, and I'm also told that we have no planned fire alarms today, so if you hear that siren, please do follow signs to exit the building as swiftly as possible. Okay. With all that information out of the way, I am delighted to welcome the first of a series of expert guest speakers to the floor. With words of wisdom, HSBC Innovation Bank UK's Head of Climate Tech, Consumer Internet and Frontier Tech, please put your hands together and give a very warm welcome to Bailey Moreau.
Thank you so much to the Royal Institute, Imperial College, and the Greenhouse for being here. This is truly a beautiful and historic building, and I think really fosters a lot of inspiration that we can hopefully change the future with some amazing climate tech endeavors. As mentioned, my name is Bailey. I head up our climate tech practice at Innovation Bank as part of HSBC. We have the privilege of working with disruptors, innovators, and visionaries, helping them move their ideas forward and really helping them, I guess, create a healthier planet. As a partner to the innovation economy, we really approach all of our relationships with sector expertise, with ecosystem connections, and with a global presence. And we do this because we believe that it's going to help our clients and also the broader ecosystem move forward on their own journeys. Climate has been an absolute standout in the UK innovation economy. Some amazing numbers. 30% of UK venture capital investment went to climate tech last year. That's 40% year-on-year growth and an unbelievable feat that we should all be incredibly proud of. We believe that innovation is going to be key to reaching net zero, which is why we are incredibly proud of our philanthropic partnership with the Greenhouse, supporting climate innovators to not only develop but scale their amazing ideas. As of 2021, 85 ventures have been through this program. So you guys are in great company. And they've learned business skills. They've worked on their own development and mentorship, as well as received grants. And we think this support is absolutely crucial for climate tech to continue to improve. And frankly, these companies are going to be moving this sector forward and taking us all along on an amazing journey. I'm going to end there, and hopefully Mary is here for me to hand over the mic. So I'm going to introduce Professor Mary Ryan. She is Vice Provost of Research and Enterprise at Imperial College London.
Always a privilege to come to the Undaunted events. So I'm Mary Ryan, I'm the Vice Provost for Research and Enterprise at Imperial College. And in that role, I oversee all of our interdisciplinary research initiatives, so including the Grantham Institute, as well as our enterprise, so translation, impact delivery, spin-outs, accelerators, etc. And I think Undaunted has a really special place in our ecosystem. It delivers tangible real-world impact almost on an absolutely regular basis in a way that I think is quite hard to understand if you're not in the middle of it. The energy, the enthusiasm, the passion, and you'll see this later when you see the pictures, not just to be an entrepreneur, that's part of it, but it's to be an entrepreneur in order to make the world a better place, in order to address some global challenges. So you'll see some totally passionate but purpose-driven individuals. Now, purpose-driven individuals are great, and ideas are great, but you don't get to innovation without structures and supports that enable that idea to make it in the real world. And what Undaunted does is wrap around everything that is needed. You've seen Alyssa, she's her own force of nature, but that energy actually suffuses everything that goes on in this program. The partnership with the Royal Institution is really special to us. We have brought together, I guess, one very old institution, and Imperial College is not so old, but really two institutions with shared values, common mission, common understanding, and the Royal Institution's brilliant, I guess, history and legacy of climate research. Imperial College's ingenuity, science, STEM, really at the cutting edge of technology. And together we're able to, I think, really add value to the work that we've been doing and the Royal Institution have been doing independently. So I don't think you want to hear from me for much longer because there's many more exciting people coming to speak. What I would encourage you all to do is engage, take part, enjoy, take some of the energy and the enthusiasm and the ideas and the spirit of change that you are going to feel this afternoon. Take it with you, spread the word, come back next year.
Many thanks to Mary Ryan there. There aren't many people who can walk in fresh from being caught on the tube, no notes, and manage to speak with such expertise. So I think thank you very much to Mary and to Bailey and Alyssa, who you will hear from more a little later on. It's almost time to hear from our first round of pitches, and here's how things are going to work. So each team will deliver a short pitch talking about their innovation, their vision, and how you might be able to support them. And we are inviting you, the audience, whether you're joining us in person or online, to submit questions to the teams using Mentimeter. And to do that, you head to menti.com and you enter the code 76085410, which will at some point go up on the screen. At some point, you'll be able to scan a QR code. That should pop up a little bit later after the first round of pitches. But that's menti.com. The code is 76085410. All of the details will be on the screen shortly, so you can scan the QR code if you haven't managed to get that down in time. And there will be plenty of time to submit your questions towards the end of each pitch. Now, after hearing all of the pitches in each section, we'll ask you to score each of our teams on 3 key areas. These are, there you go, told you it would come up, that's the QR code, and the code you need, menti.com, is the address. So after you've heard from all of the pitches in each section, we ask you to score each team based on 3 key areas, and these are commercial potential, the climate impact of their innovation, and the quality of the pitch. And at the end of all of the pitches this afternoon, we are going to award the 3 highest scoring teams. So please do get involved and submit your scores at the end of each pitch. And that screen, if you haven't had a chance to get to it, will pop up again later on. Okay. So, with no further ado, let's get straight into our first section. And we have 5 pitches coming up, focused on low-carbon materials and low-carbon systems. And to begin, please welcome our very first founder for the day, Sarah from FIBA.
Is this working? Yeah. Perfect. I feel like I'm on the West End stage. It's very exciting. Great to be here. Do I click this to start? Hooray, it all works. Let me introduce myself. I'm Sarah, and my company is called FIBA. I want to begin by telling you what you need to be a next-gen material developer, okay? You need to be able to scale. You need to hit price points that the market can handle. You need to be able to have market fit, so you need to be able to produce quality material consistently, and you need to be able to have impact. And the reason that we're here today developing our fiber and material is that we don't think anybody other than us can do this. So what's fashion's problem? You might think of fashion as a beautiful industry, and it is. I've been in love with it for many decades. But it's also a really dirty one, 2 to 8% of global emissions. Some people even quote 10, isn't that insane? And 1/5 of global plastic use. And brands are under pressure to act now. You know, we've heard about sustainable fashion for a while, but actually mandatory legislation is coming in down the pipeline between 2026 and 2030, which is going to force brands to act around sustainability. And there are going to be big fines if they don't. Also, consumer pressure. 67% of consumers now cite material sustainability as a driver of purchase, according to Boston Consulting Group. So what's wrong with what we've got at the moment? Well, cotton and viscose, where do I begin? I'm always blown away when I see these stats, even though I've seen them a million times. 3 to 7 years of your drinking water to make one cotton t-shirt. That is insane. 300 million trees are deforested every year to make fashion. 16% of global insecticides, which then goes into water streams, causes birth defects, causes health issues for local populations. And meanwhile, we're using land to grow cotton for fashion when local populations are starving. It doesn't feel right. And we think that there needs to be an alternative. So this is the founders of my company, me and my colleague Varun. My background is 2 decades in the fashion industry as a founder, as a consultant to big brands, and as a material innovator. My colleague Varun comes way from a different place. He is an agricultural impact founder with expertise in decentralized supply chains, and he's a Forbes 30 under 30 in manufacturing. And what we've created is 2 groundbreaking fabrics, 1 cotton replacement and 1 viscose replacement, both made from banana waste. Why banana waste? Well, here's a fun fact for you. We can use it at your next quiz night. The banana plant only fruits once, ever. Then the tree is chopped down and burned. That's 150 million tons of waste discarded every year. You could make enough of our fabric to go to the moon and back 10 times with that waste. And thanks to our unique process and technology, our carbon footprint is 1/10 of that of organic cotton or viscose. Our quality is consistent, which none of our competitors have been able to achieve. And our market price is 40 to 60% below our next direct competitor. Here's a look at our supply chain. I can't take you through this in detail because we don't have time today, but what I can tell you is that wherever you see the name FIBA, that is where we intervene. Firstly, with our brilliant network of tree waste supply coming from my co-founder's previous business. Secondly, with retting technology. Thirdly, with solar drying technology. And finally, with our feedback loop with brands that we have to be able to get absolute perfect market fit. And the brands, as I said, they're saying what is on the market at the moment is too expensive. It's a poor market fit. It can't scale. And it's not actually very sustainable. Well, we've proved with our first pilot that we can do something different. There are multiple competitive advantages we have, and I'd love to talk about them later. But what I'll say for now is we've got a paid pilot in the pipeline with Kering, along with another 19 pilots. We're currently raising. Our round is now 50% oversubscribed, but we've extended it. Hooray! And minus 3 seconds.
Okay, well done. Thank you very much indeed for our very first pitch. If you
Speed pitch at the end.
Yeah, well done. Stay with us. Okay, do get your questions in. You can scan the QR code that you see on the screen. You can enter the code 7608. I'm going to ask you to stay with us. Don't leave us yet. Okay.
Which is the lucky side that gets the piece of fabric to feel?
Oh, hands up and see who wants that.
Who wants to be lucky? I'm going to go over here first. You can see that it's perfect, consistent quality. How soft is it? How soft is it?
Very soft.
Good work. Okay, well, listen, while we're waiting for the first question to come in, let me start you off with one.
Sure thing.
And well done on a brilliant first pitch and for kicking us off. What gives you the confidence that a model like FIBA's can actually scale?
It's a very large question to answer in 4 minutes, but a great question. It's actually our biggest risk. So we're doing R&D in collaboration with Cranfield University around the chemical finishing of our fibre. And we're also building machinery in order to create these processes more efficiently to be able to scale. And scaling is key for us in terms of focus, because we don't want to be another brand that's just making a capsule collection here. We have a decentralized supply chain where we collect this waste from multiple farms. My co-founder has 3,500 farm contacts across India from his previous business, and that's also supported by the Indian government. It's supported by NGOs, and so we've got a really great infrastructure there. And what that means is that we are in a unique position to gather that waste and be able to then bring it to a centralised supply chain. We actually had a really big breakthrough on that in January when we went to meet Amul, who are a massive dairy company. Now you'd be thinking, why would you do that? It's because they actually have a really similar supply chain. So they're a multi-billion-dollar company, but they still collect milk from tiny farms around India. And we went and we're like, how do you make this work? And actually what opened up in front of us was their ecosystem of balance, of push and pull. And the questions I wanted to ask were not like, big market questions. It was like, what happens if someone waters down the milk? Because actually milk and fibre are similar. They've got a shelf life. They need to be transported in a certain way, et cetera, et cetera. And actually we've onboarded a director from Amul who has been there 40 years, scaled 2 offshoot companies under the Amul umbrella as well, who thinks they can replicate that model. So we're excited about that.
Brilliant stuff. Look, we've got a question in, and I want to make sure we get to as many of them
Yes.
as possible from the audience, asking how does price compare to regular cotton and viscose?
Great question. So at the moment, our price is £12 a metre. You might know that regular cotton and viscose is somewhere, well, organic cotton is around kind of £6 a metre, viscose similar. We can reach price parity with cotton and viscose within 3 years, and that's important because at the moment we're coming in a lot lower than our next-gen competitors, but of course, in order to be able to scale and meet the breadth of the market, we need to have price parity. We're beginning by targeting luxury brands. Within 3 years, we'll be able to have that price parity, and at which point, when our impact in carbon is 10x, and that's not to mention our impact in water, which is even bigger, there'll be a no-brainer whether you're going to choose us or choose cotton.
Okay, do we have any further questions then? We do. Is the fabric as easily dyeable as others? It seems like an important part of the fashion industry.
Yes.
Nice and quick, there you go. I can see the great USP. Is there any IP or patents?
Yeah, good question. Yes, there is. So there's an IP and patent. We're expecting our first in March 25. That will be around finishing processes, finishing and softening processes, enzymatic degumming for any technical people in the room, around being able to soften the material to make it brilliant for ready to wear. You might have noticed, if you've seen banana fibres or other types of fibres before, that a lot of those fibres are used in accessories, more canvassy things, quite stiff, whereas what we're doing, as you will see if you've been lucky enough to touch our fabric, it's very soft, very floaty. And so in order to do that, we're developing these techniques which are not only applicable to our material, but also licensable to the cotton industry too. We've also got some IP around machinery we're developing to be able to increase the efficiency as well as the safety of the retting process. Design's already underway there. And also we've got proprietary information about the drying conditions for this particular fibre, because we are in this unique position having this solar drying capacity to be the only company who can really create consistent quality. And we know from having interviewed more than 50 brands that the reason that brands cannot sort of implement these kinds of new fibres at scale at the moment is that consistent quality isn't there, and the fashion industry will not accept that. We're the only people to have solved that problem.
Fantastic. We're out of time, but Sarah, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And well done on a brilliant first pitch. If you do have any further questions that you'd like to put to any of the teams, just a reminder, they will all be in the networking session and throughout the breaks at dedicated standing tables, so you can put your questions to them then. Let's move on to our next pitch of the afternoon. Please put your hands together for Dan from Decarbonite.
Hi, everyone. This is Decarbonite, and I'm here to tell you about our mission to create the most sustainable fiberboard in the world. So my name's Dan Ellis. I'm an award-winning industrial designer and the inventor of Decarbonite, and I work with J. Paul Neely, who's a 2-time founder in emerging technologies. And together, we're incredibly excited to be solving the problem of medium density fiberboard. So medium density fiberboard, otherwise known as MDF, is absolutely everywhere. It's probably what all of your kitchen units are made out of. It's maybe in all of the furniture in your house. We love it, obviously, as a culture. We use tons of it. But it has three critical problems that make it incredibly unsustainable. So the first is that MDF's made from 80% virgin wood stocks, so cutting down trees at their peak of their carbon sequestering potential. The second is that MDF is bound together with toxic petrochemical binders that are toxic for the craftspeople that work with the material and toxic for the consumers that buy the products. And the third is that these toxic petrochemical binders make MDF an absolute nightmare to dispose of. So almost all of it is incinerated or sent to landfill. So this is a growing problem. The MDF market is expected to reach $100 billion by 2030. Right when we should be using less of this material, we're actually set to be using a whole load more of it. And so introducing Decarbonite, which is our solution to this problem, which is a patent-pending, non-toxic, 100% biodegradable, and carbon-negative alternative to traditional MDF. It's beautiful. You can come and have a look at it afterwards. It takes paint finishes, veneer finishes, you name it. It performs very similar to MDF. We're able to achieve these performance characteristics by combining fast-growing hemp, reinforced with biochar, and organic binders that together create a product that is both sustainable and doesn't compromise at all on quality or performance. So we want to take this product to the furniture industry. So that's 50% of the MDF market today, which is the majority. And we're already in early conversations with IKEA to see what it would look like to integrate into their supply chain. Pending the right testing and certifications, we also intend to enter the construction industry at a later date. But today, we found a really nice niche market right here in the UK with a lot of demand for our material. And that's the theatre, TV, and film set production market. So a typical film production might use 14,000 sheets of MDF. They're up for 3 months while the production runs, and after a single use, they're all incinerated. So we're in talks with the National Theatre, and they're really keen to get Decarbonite into their productions to reduce their impact. And one of the reasons is the beauty of Decarbonite is that it's perfectly circular. So you can chip it up, recycle it, and repress it, or you can put it in the ground as a soil additive that enhances the quality of the soil and can be used to grow more Decarbonite boards in the future. And so we've achieved all of these sustainability characteristics and all of these performance characteristics, and we're also incredibly proud to have reached price parity with premium MDF. And we believe that at scale, we could be cost competitive with most composite wood products. And that scale is why we're here today and why we need your support. So in order to scale up our production, we need expertise and investment so that we can start supplying the creative industries in the UK. So we plan to supply the National Theatre and others like it this year and next before moving on to our ultimate goal, which is entering IKEA's supply chain by 2030. So thank you for considering Decarbonite. Please come and chat with me afterwards and have a look at our material. And I hope that together we can realize Decarbonite's full potential at scale. Thanks very much.
Well done.
Thanks
Thank you very much indeed. OK, let's get on to questions. And starting with one as questions come in from the audience on how you can compete with MDF volumes coming out of China at such low prices.
Yeah, so obviously there are low prices in China, but they still have to use wood as a primary material, which is slow growing, will ultimately be bound to the same kind of supply chain pressures as wood internationally. And because Decarbonite is made from 100% agricultural waste, we believe that even if we were manufactured in China, we'd still be able to produce Decarbonite cheaper than wood-based composite wood products. But something else that you can't ignore is that when we spoke to the National Theatre, actually one of the things they were most interested about us was that we were manufactured in the UK, and they were willing to pay a premium for that because obviously with new regulations and a price on carbon, we may become competitive with products produced elsewhere that will be cost as such because of the emissions that are caused.
OK, we've had a question in, is the product patented?
Sorry?
A patent, have you got a patent?
Yeah, so we're patent pending. No one's ever made this material before. And we've just submitted our last revision and waiting for it to come through.
Brilliant. If we have time for the next question, are there any competitors with similar patents pending?
I can't comment on that question specifically. What's that, sorry?
I know a few.
You know a few? Yeah, so I can't comment on that specific, but there are obviously competitor products. Yeah.
Okay, any further questions from the audience? Let me see while we're getting those through. We have another question in about why your focus on movie studios or theatre productions when we know they run on such tight budgets, and why they'd be willing to use decarbonite with that in mind.
Yeah, so they've already expressed quite a lot of interest in our material. Naturally, some of them do have tight budgets, but they also have a lot of strict regulation coming in, forcing them to use more sustainable materials. So the National Theatre and theatres up and down the country are having to comply with what's called the Theatre Green Book, which requires that 50% of the mass of their productions are made from sustainable, recycled, or repurposed materials. And so they're willing to pay a premium to meet those regulations.
Brilliant. We've had a question in from the audience asking about how your process differs from MDF production.
So it's very similar to MDF production, although it has some important distinctions that I'm sure you'll appreciate I can't talk about today. But they have to do with the fact that we're not using wood, we're using hemp, so that has a whole specialized process associated with it. We're not using standard urea formaldehyde binders, we're using our own proprietary organic binders, which has a whole specialism and knowledge associated with it. So it's similar machinery, but requires a specialist know-how.
Another question in asks about whether the material is usable across different climatic regions.
Oh, that's a very exciting and interesting question. We haven't had the luxury of testing it across different climatic regions yet, but with funding and time, we would love to be able to do that.
Brilliant. And how long does it take to compost, and how is it regenerating soil?
Yeah, so I'll take that in two parts. So the answer to the first question is that we don't know exactly. Our company hasn't existed long enough to test how fast this material composts. And you should actually try that in order to know. How is it regenerating the soil? Well, it's made from loads of carbonaceous materials that will fertilize the soil as they degrade. But importantly, because it has a biochar component, the biochar will never degrade. So the carbon dioxide locked into the biochar will remain sequestered. And biochar's primary market right now actually is as a soil enhancer. But it's a misconception that it degrades. It doesn't degrade. It actually provides a structure and an ecosystem for soil microbes to live in. So as the material degrades, it will both enhance the quality of the soil and leave biochar remaining that will permanently enhance the quality of the soil.
You have samples at the table that people
Yeah,
can
we do.
see.
Please come and have a look at them.
Brilliant. That brings us to time. Dan, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for your questions so far. That brings us on to our next pitch of the afternoon. Please welcome Liz from Carbon Cell.
Hello, everyone. I am Liz, and I am one of the co-founders of Carbon Cell. And we are on a mission to make polystyrene waste, like what you can see behind me right now, a thing of the past. I probably don't have to spend a lot of time, particularly in this room, explaining why polystyrene is bad. We all know that it takes petrochemicals to make. It takes hundreds of years to degrade. It can photodegrade and leach harmful chemicals into the environment. And despite what the manufacturers might tell you about it being recyclable, it's not very widely recycled. But despite us all knowing that, the fact is that demand is not really slowing. In fact, this year alone, we're going to make enough of this stuff to fill the equivalent of 141,867 Olympic swimming pools. It's a lot. Legislation is beginning to catch up with things like single-use plastic bans, but the reality is viable replacements for EPS have been really hard to find. In fact, in Australia, where they've put in pretty aggressive targets to phase out the material, manufacturers of brands have come back and said, what are we supposed to switch to? There's no way we can meet these targets. But that's where we come in. So Carbon Cell is a foam that is carbon negative, it's non-toxic, and at the end of its life, it can be composted in home composting settings. Our patent-pending technology allows us to create a rigid expanded foam from biochar that is thermally insulative, lightweight, strong, while remaining compostable. CarbonCell has a negative greenhouse gas emissions factor because of the biochar we use. You just heard about biochar from Dan, and I'm happy to answer any more questions about that and how we got to this number after the presentation. If you look at us versus the competitive set, we compete with leading-edge eco-materials like mycelium foams. But we have a key advantage that our manufacturing process is much more similar to EPS. We expand with heat in a mold in a rapid fashion, so we can compete on manufacturing and scale up. We also are headed up against cardboard, which is probably the biggest player in the eco space right now, very affordable, very widely available, but not very strong and not very carbon negative. And then, of course, against EPS, we have our carbon negativity, and we're competing on affordability and compression strength. If you do the math, using CarbonCell instead of EPS could result in a 3.7 kilogram reduction in CO2e for every kilogram of material used. And it's 3 times stronger than polystyrene, which gives us a key advantage in the beachhead market we're targeting first, which is electronics packaging. We found through our customer discovery there's a clear unmet need here where protecting goods from drop and vibration, it's just not something that pulp can effectively do with the strength that it has. With a licensing model, we can achieve scale while protecting our IP. So we take biochar from our biochar suppliers, we process it into a patent-pending precursor, and then we sell that to expanded foam manufacturers who already have the equipment set up at scale to make this stuff in large quantities. So for 2024, we have 3 key development activities. We are doing prototype testing with 4 pilot partners. We are testing our manufacturing scale-up with our manufacturing partner here in the UK. And then we have 2 Innovate UK grants, which will allow us to test with end users and broader stakeholders in the packaging landscape. We are a team of engineers, strategists, and designers with a passion for sustainability and over 20 years combined experience in business. We all met while on a master's course here in London at Imperial College and Royal College of Art. And we were united by this problem and growing up by the sea and seeing it firsthand. And this is what it looks like. It's pretty bleak. And the reality is that polystyrene pollution could triple by 2040 if no action is taken. But the good thing is, with your help, we can act now. And if you're interested in helping us on that journey, we're looking to talk to potential pilot customers who want to test the material, anyone who's in the manufacturing space, and pre-seed investors in advance of our round later this year. So thank you.
Liz, thank you very much indeed. And you can now please submit your questions using the QR code on screen. To kick us off, welcome along to the other member of your team from CarbonCell. What happens to the material at the end of life?
When we're done with it, we just throw it into the compost heap outside our studio, and after a couple of weeks it's gone, which is obviously really satisfying. But there's also the option that it can go into the food waste bin and then go to an anaerobic digester, where the binder will break down, and the biochar has been shown to improve the efficiency and optimize the digester, which is really cool as well. But ultimately, we're aware that there's a number of different scenarios, and all of those will affect the carbon emission factor. And we're actually undertaking an Innovate UK grant at the moment to explore how our end users would most like to dispose of the packaging and what the brands want to do and what the suppliers upstream want to do. The result of this project is going to be we discover what the best way to deal with it, and then implement that. It's really exciting.
A question from the audience asks about the additive that allows it to expand. What is it?
I don't think I can talk about that right now.
Okay, on to the next question. Where do you get your biochar from and how plentiful is it?
We have a few suppliers that we've been testing with that are UK-based that use wood waste, whole tree. They also use mycelium, spent substrate. So after they've grown mushrooms, you can pyrolyze that. There are some suppliers that are using rice husk waste and a variety of other different things. We tested textiles, we tested potato peels. So we're still looking to identify the best supply partner. And then once we have them identified, we would scale up. Ideally, it's located as close to production as possible. So let's say it's in Europe in the future, we would find a European biochar supplier.
How much material are you currently producing and how much investment do you need to scale, asks another audience member.
Yeah, right now we're producing in relatively small quantities, and you can see some samples outside. Our aim is to scale that up. With a 30,000 pound capex for materials, we can achieve a production capacity of 239,000 kilos of our feedstock. So that's our next step as part of our pre-seed round, which we're targeting later this year.
Okay. Another question from the audience asks about the size of the market you're addressing. What is it?
Yeah, so protective packaging is $194 billion globally. Sorry, dollars, I'm American, if you couldn't tell. And in the UK, it's a bit smaller market, it's 59 million. We would look to expand to Europe imminently to grow that market. And then we're also looking in the long term at the built environment where EPS and alternative materials like foam are worth the equivalent of $8.6 billion.
Great looking product, says one of the audience members. Are there waste streams from the potential manufacturing processes?
Oh, from our manufacturing process. I guess I don't know who's clarifying that. Well, in our manufacturing process, any offcuts, let's say we're CNCing it, we can reclaim that waste and reuse it. From our manufacturing process, what would you say?
Yeah, because the material has this like amazing property that can be put back into the soil at its end of life and be used as like an amazing soil additive. So we kind of see like the waste stream itself is like just another value add. So it kind of becomes a product in itself after it becomes waste. So yeah, it's kind of the whole thing is like a valuable waste stream. Yeah, and upstream, the biochar itself is made from waste streams from like agri-waste and yeah, waste biomass as well. So it's kind of like different channels of waste coming through.
Does it absorb moisture?
Yeah. So in like a very humid environment, it will start to absorb the moisture. In like normal ambient conditions, it won't absorb any moisture. And it'll stay like in the stable form for like, well, we've had some knocking around for a few years now, and it's still like very solid, retains its compressive strength. But yeah, in like excess of like 80% humidity, it will start to absorb some moisture, and we're kind of looking into ways we can alter the recipe to address that.
Okay, that brings us to time. Thank you very much, Team Carbon Cell. Thank you very much indeed, well done. Okay, moving on. Next in the low carbon materials and low carbon systems segment, please welcome Chloe from Pulpatronics.
Hi, I'm Chloe, co-founder of Pulpatronics, and we're unlocking a more sustainable RFID technology. I forgot this. Have you ever wondered how anti-theft security detectors in stores know when to beep? Or how auto check-in machines magically scan what you're buying? RFID technology enables that to happen. However, every year, more than 18 billion RFID tags are made for single use, meaning that they're extremely resource-intensive and costly to make. I felt really guilty when I first realized that I was contributing to e-waste as I threw these tags into landfill. Imagine if we could create smart tags from just paper. No more metal mining, no more unnecessary e-waste. Pulpatronics has unlocked the next generation of RFID tags that are chipless, metal-free, and paper-based. Our tags can cut CO2 emissions by 70% and bring costs down by 2 times. Our technology laser induces a conductive circuitry directly onto the paper itself. So that's how we reduce components, simplify the manufacturing, enable a more circular economy through paper recycling. No one in the industry is commercializing smart tags that are metal-free. And because of that, their cost and emissions are significantly higher. The global RFID market will reach $36 billion by the end of the decade. And currently, more than 60% of RFID tag production goes towards the fashion industry. So we're starting with the sustainable fashion market in the UK first, before diversifying into logistics, manufacturing, packaging, as well as hospitality. To get to the market quicker, we're launching our metal-free hybrid tags first. These tags have no barriers for brands to adopt and can already improve our margins from industry standards of 8% to 37%. Following that, we will launch our chipless tags once we further our R&D a bit more. These tags can improve margins to 54% and can reduce even more CO2 emissions. Finally, we will license out our technology once our 2 patents have been filed, or I guess approved. Since launching in June 2023, we've spoken to 70 stakeholders to understand sustainability priorities as well as inventory management practices. We've secured 8 letters of intent and have 3 pilots lined up to trial each one of our products with later in 2025. We've also been part of various top incubator programs, research grants, as well as customer discovery programs, and we have won prestigious design and engineering awards as well. Last year, we secured $140K in equity-free funding. We're actively fundraising for our pre-seed round of £400,000, and we have 70% in soft commitments already. This will enable us to hire a material scientist, an electronics engineer, and it'll also enable us to build out our first pilot plant for our hybrid tags. As a team, we have backgrounds ranging from engineering to design to natural sciences and business. And we have advisors filling in the gaps in corporate governance, manufacturing, antenna innovation, and electrical engineering. So, if a major retailer like Zara switched to our tags, we can already help them save 2% of their entire year's greenhouse gas emissions. We are here to help brands and businesses save more, increase item level tracking across more products, and preserve more of our world's resources. We're looking for angels and deep tech investors to help close the last 30% of our round, so please come find us and chat with us later. Thank you.
Very well done. Thank you very much indeed. And we invite your team member to join us on stage. OK, over to your questions. And again, the QR code is on the screen now. Let's start off with one about the other sustainable tags currently in the market. Are there any?
Yeah, so for alternative sustainable tags, there are a few eco tags. How they are different is that they use recycled material, for example, recycled paper, but they all currently still have metals and chips in them. So even though there are also eco tags in the market, they're actually not being implemented in the market because of their costs. So that's where we see ourselves coming in to be the most sustainable and affordable as well.
We have a question about testing. One audience member asks, where are you testing this currently?
Let's take this one. So the tags were first validated at Imperial College London, where they reached TRL 4. And then we took them to another grant collaboration with Cranfield University, where they were tested under a simulated environment and reached TRL level 5. And we are currently further improving them in-house as part of our Innovate UK grant.
The next question asks, what scale do you need to reach to validate a licensing model to key target customers?
For this question, licensing model, that's definitely on the later part of our roadmap. So hopefully we'll be able to actually start thinking about this later in mid next year. However, we do have a very interested party who we are actually looking to pilot with, and they're interested in basically integrating our laser technology into the production line. So we would be thinking about that as a licensing model with them.
Okay. How does it work without metal?
Take this one. So basically, the way we are replacing the metal is we have a very specific paper substrate that we optimize for this purpose, and we use a type of laser with, again, pretty specific settings that changes the chemical composition of the top layer of the paper, and it turns it into a conductive carbon-based material, basically. So that way we can avoid using metals, and we don't actually need to add anything to the paper sample. We are working from the paper.
We have a question in about whether it's possible just to rip it out. The plastic one is hard to take out currently.
So I think for our product, we are definitely not, our goal is not to improve kind of theft prevention mechanisms. So if you really wanted to kind of steal the product or steal anything, someone could definitely take a pair of scissors and go and like try to cut the tag off. So that's definitely not something that is like core priority. Furthermore, I think we are looking into ways to basically sandwich it so that it actually gets more protective and it's not that easy to just rip off.
There's just one thing to add on to that. We are looking into working with bioplastics, especially ones that are derived from plant-based materials, and then that would kind of address this durability issue.
Okay, we have a question in which I need glasses to read, but RFID have ranges from centimetres to various metres, and they're used in operations beyond in-store experiences. Does your product work at distance and crowded setups?
So it's definitely one of the biggest challenges of the cheapest technology is reading distance and also like bulk scanning multiple tags at the same time. So this is something that we're actively looking into. And it's also part of the reason why we developed the hybrid tags. The hybrid tags would basically be already compatible with current infrastructure, and those would function as NFCs, so like short distance scanning, as well as UHF RFID tags up to like 20 meters of scanning.
Next question asks about if this technology is patented.
We have filed 2 patents, so in the process of being patented.
Brilliant. And that brings us to time. Thank you very much
Great,
indeed. Well done.
Thank you.
And just a reminder, again, if you have any further questions that we didn't get the chance to get to, all of our teams will be out on their stand-up tables during our networking sessions and at breaks too. That brings us on to the final pitch of this section. Please welcome Hazel from Fibe.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hazel. We all know fashion's bad for the environment. We could make it better, but how could we do that with potatoes? So we could replace 70% of the world's natural demand for textile fibers, demand for natural textile fibers with potatoes. But I think that'd be a bit of a waste. You could eat those, you could drink those. So what we do instead is we collect the stems that grow above the potato and then extract natural fibers from that. We are Fibe, and we started this project as there's huge demand for natural fibers and for sustainable textile fibers. But we believe, there's huge demand for sustainable fibers, with 90% of brands committing and pledging to use fully sustainable materials by 2030. Yet there's yet to be a fiber that is truly sustainable, scalable, and affordable in the market. We believe that our material can actually reach these goals. In terms of sustainability, we use no additional land. In addition to that, on top of that, you already used for potato cultivation. We use 99.7% less water and produce 82% less carbon emissions than a cotton equivalent. In terms of scale, I've already hinted at this. 150 megatons of this material are getting wasted each year. That's about the weight of 23 London buses every minute. Imagine that at your local bus stop. And yeah, if we were to valorize everything, we would be able to replace 70% of the world's demand for natural fibers. And finally, by focusing on making a fiber that is physically and chemically similar to cotton, we can actually utilize the existing highly optimized fashion supply chain in order to create something that's genuinely affordable. Because of these impressive metrics, fashion brands, investors, and the actual government got really interested in what we do. With that, we managed to raise almost £1 million in non-dilutive funding through grants such as the Greenhouse Project. And thanks to the Greenhouse Project, we managed to close our first round of this investment of over £1 million, with our lead investor being Tinshed Ventures, the investment arm of Patagonia. And that's not all. We were busy back at the lab creating this. The first yarn made out of potato harvest waste. With this, we have validated that our fibers can survive the harshest step of the manufacturing process. And with these 2 massive milestones behind us, we're looking to scale up. We're currently operating at lab scale. This took months. We're looking to scale up to a pilot production facility, and we aim to commercialize our fibers by 2026. In order to achieve that, we're looking for technical advisors in the bioprocessing and engineering sector to take us from conical flasks all the way up to reaction vessels, and we're also looking to build a board to long-term steer the company. Thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much indeed. Right, again, scan the code on the screen above us for those questions. And to kick us off, Hazel, we have one about what the fibre feels like. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so come to me and you can have a touch. Physically, it's very similar to cotton. At the beginning of the process, fibre experts called it grass. Most recently, someone out the blue said it feels like cashmere. So yeah, we are expecting to be on par with cotton in terms of kind of feel and finish.
Okay. A question from the audience asks about how much raw material is needed to make one T-shirt, for example.
Yeah, so in terms of mass of potato stems, I can't give you exact kilograms, but 1 acre of potatoes would give you the same amount of fiber as 1 acre of cotton.
Who are your target clients? Luxury brands or more affordable brands for all of us to wear here, asks one audience member.
So our very long-term plan is to replace cotton. We wish for everyone to be wearing our material at all times because it's so sustainable. Obviously, we can't do that now because we haven't reached that scale yet. So we're looking at performance brands that have the capital and the interest to actually take these sort of fibers into the market first, and then we ideally would trickle down as the price goes down of our fiber.
Okay. How easy is it to dye or achieve similar colors to existing materials used at scale?
We haven't completed any dyeing experiments yet, but on all the fiber level testing we've done, it looks exactly like cotton, even under an SCM microscope. And we believe that it should be able to work with existing dyes, but we haven't looked into that, mostly because we're focusing on sustainable dyes, because if we were to take our fiber and then use it with unsustainable methods, you've kind of defeated the point. And to do that, we need a bit more time.
Okay. How much funding do you forecast needing to reach commercialization, asks one audience member, and what timescale do you anticipate hitting commercialization?
Timescale-wise, we're looking to have a garment out there by 2026. In order to commercialize, I think it's a little too early to say in terms of funding. We're currently looking to build a pilot facility with the round that we've already raised, and thanks to that, we all learn to what machines we do need, what machines we don't need, what we have to develop, what we can buy, and only then I could really answer that question with any degree of confidence. But obviously, we create materials. This is a higher CapEx business, so we don't expect it to be cheap.
Okay. We've had a question about why you're focusing on potato leaf waste particularly, and also whether it works with other leaf waste.
So stem, I lost it. We use stems instead of leaves. And yes, so essentially this is a bast fiber. So is hemp, so is linen, so is linseed, so is tomatoes. Our patent-pending technology can work with any bast fiber in order to extract fibers. We're currently focusing on potato just because of the scale and also the fact that where there are people, there are potatoes. And so it just makes sense to go with this one at the beginning.
Okay. Is it recyclable? Are fibers long enough to allow multiple cycles of manufacturing?
It should be recyclable. In garments, the difference usually occurs later down the stage with dyes and additives. So on the fiber level, it's biodegradable even. And in terms of fiber length, it should be as recyclable as cotton, again, because the length is so similar to cotton.
Brilliant. That brings us to time. Thank you very much indeed. Well done. Okay, and if you would like to see that in person, Hazel will be on a stand in networking. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, thank you very much to our first round of pitchers who've all done a really brilliant job. We're going to take a few moments now just to allow you to score each of the teams that you've just seen. Head to menti.com, enter your code 76085410 to submit your scores, and you may need to refresh the browser to make it work. I'll give you just a few moments to do that before we move on, and a reminder that you may just need to refresh that page if you're having any problems with that. So I'll give you a few moments to do that before joining you again. And I'm really pleased to be able to welcome to the stage our keynote speaker this afternoon, an expert in climate innovation and investment, the CEO and co-founder of Sightline Climate, which, as many of you know, produces the popular CTVC newsletter. Please give a very warm welcome to Kim Zoe.
All right. This is a very cool stage. Hi, everyone. I'm Kim. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sightline Climate. I'll stand over here under the big screen. We write the CTVC newsletter, which, if you haven't heard of, is a climate tech newsletter where we cover everything that's happening in climate tech, from deals, technologies, to now covering things in the projects land as well. So just to give you a 2-second overview, Sightline Climate is a research and data company. We track the shift from commitment to deployment in climate tech. And we get this question a lot: how do I know what's real? There's so much happening in climate tech. Our job is to distill that and provide better data and transparency into all of the funding, but also commercialization trends in climate tech. And climate covers everything, right? Back in the days of clean tech, it was mostly energy and transportation. Now we could say climate tech covers 7 broad verticals, ranging from energy, transportation, food and land use, built environment, carbon, all the way to industry. And that goes deeper and deeper into different sectors like hydrogen or alternative protein or batteries. So today what we're going to be talking about is climate tech investment trends. We published our 2023 report at the start of the year, and we've been tracking the climate tech funding space for the last 5 years. And just to give a quick word on the methodology, today we're speaking primarily about climate tech venture and growth funding. We track all these deals week over week, day over day, and we validate them as well with the investors who are investing in these companies. And so we're going to kick off with quick 2023 highlights, what happened in 2023. Then we're going to take a closer look. Why did it happen? What caused these trends? And then finish out with, what do we think might happen in 2024? What's the outlook for this year? So to start, we're talking about venture and growth primarily in this report, but venture and growth is part of what we call the broader climate capital stack. This is an illustrative chart, but what it really demonstrates is the capital journey that many climate tech startups have to go on. In the old days, they call it valleys of death. We think that's kind of strong, so we call it the gap. But it starts off on the innovation side, right? Many of you here today, starting off with an idea or a PhD, an idea in the lab, and then building a pilot. In some cases, if it's a hard tech idea, then scaling up to a demonstration, which is your first kind of scaled up real world demonstration. And then finally crossing over the gap to scale. And that's what we call, getting to nth of a kind. Maybe you're off of your first of a kind project, you're onto your second, third, fourth of a kind. And that's sort of where solar and wind have gotten to. They're at scale, they're being financed by project finance and banks, whereas many sort of earlier stage sectors or emerging sectors are still in this, venture and growth category. So this is kind of what the journey to scale looks like from a capital standpoint. Now, we've been tracking this space since 2020. So this is a cumulative chart showing the venture and growth that have gone into climate tech. There's been $142 billion US dollars since 2020. Compare that to Clean Tech 1.0, 2006 to 2011, 5 years, there was 25 billion invested during clean tech. So a more than 5x difference. I think it's easy to get caught up in the, this year it's down, this year it's up, but cumulatively, if you look at the past 4 years, 5x more than Clean Tech 1.0. Now, since 2020, who are the founders who've actually been active in these spaces? We break it up by vertical and by sector. So looking across these 7 verticals, you can see that the count of companies is really relatively diversified, the number of companies. But then when you switch it to investment, actual amount of funding that has gone into these different sectors, you can see that there's sort of a big 3 that emerge: transport, energy, and food and land use. And those big 3 make up 80% of funding that have gone into climate tech. Particularly, batteries, autos make up over 20%, as well as alternative protein make up a healthy chunk as well. And there's been a mismatch between investment and emissions. So this is from the IPCC 2019 report. You can see here that transportation makes up about 15% of emissions, but funding takes up 37%. Compare that to industry, where emissions take up 24%, but investment is only 10%. So there's definitely a mismatch of where investment is going relative to the emissions. Now, if we look at 2023, 3 things to remember as we go into the funding report. One is investment was down. Investment was down in climate tech 30% from 2022. Growth was down the most, but the market freeze for the first time did come for the early stage. And then finally, deals got done. Deal activity was still active, but deals were smaller, round sizes were smaller. So if we look at the 2023 data, you can see here on a quarterly basis how much investment has been going into climate tech over the last few quarters. You'll notice in 2023 that investment was $32 billion, down 30% from 2022. However, this is somewhat resilient compared to the broader venture and growth market. And you'll see a pretty big peak in Q3, which we'll talk about next. This is also the first time that the deal count, deal activity, actually declined. So you can see that decline in the line, which is the number of deals. Now that Q3, why was the spike so big? It was because of these big mega deals that happened. These top 10 deals made up 24% of investment in 2023. You might notice a lot of names on this screen, actually pretty well-known European names like H2 Green Steel, Northvolt, lots happening in the transportation energy spaces, primarily to finance big projects, big facilities, in the hundreds of millions, if not billions, to build steel, battery manufacturing, et cetera, et cetera. Now, for the first time, as we talked about, the market freeze did reach the early stage. So when we were tracking this in 2022, the first sort of signs of the macroeconomic decline, early stage stayed pretty resilient. It was still growing. This is the first time where Series A has declined from a funding standpoint, and deal activity has also tapered off a little bit as well. Particularly if you look at the growth stage, that's where the bulk of this 30% decline has happened. So rounds, especially at the Series C and growth stages, have taken the largest hit. And if we switch over to a vertical view, you can also see that everything was down, but not totally out. So there's actually a pretty substantial increase in industry, particularly things like steel and cement that was up from a funding standpoint. And then in terms of number of deals, it's actually a pretty interesting pickup in the built environment. So in particular, we were seeing a lot of deal activity in HVAC, heat pumps, building electrification, energy efficiency get done, especially at the earlier stage. And again, deals got done, just smaller. So that was the quick 2023 highlights. Now, if we take a closer look, why were things down? Why was growth in particular down? Remember, if you can remember 3 things, the first is 2023 was a wait and see for big investments in climate tech, but also more broadly, interest rates went up, investors and founders alike pulled back. Companies also weren't graduating, and we'll talk more about what graduation means. And then finally, exits were few and far between. Public markets were closed, SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies also died down, which we'll talk about. And just a little bonus as well, investors seem to lose their taste for alternative protein. So if we focus on the wait and see, what was happening here, this is a chart that shows what we call mega deals. So particularly the mega deals we focused on was the $100 to $500 million round size cohort. And the reason this cohort is so important is because this is typically the cohort we see when a company raises a big funding round to build their first-of-a-kind facility or demonstration project. You need a lot of money to build these things. And so if you look at the chart, you can see that for the first time, or over the last few quarters, these mega rounds have actually decreased. Investors in particular have been playing a wait and see with this cohort. This $100 to $500 million cohort used to make up about 40 to 50% of total investment a year. In 2023, it declined to 30%. So definitely seeing a drop in these really important first-of-a-kind, mega rounds where these are financing and taking those companies hopefully across the gap. The other thing to note here is graduation rates have been decreasing. And what do we mean by graduation rates? Think of a startup as a student. You go from university to graduation. In the same sense, for venture, think of the different rounds as different grades, going from seed to Series A to Series B to Series C. When we looked at the last few 6 months or last few half-year periods, we can see that during the peak, first half of 2022, 37% of deals we tracked in that space were graduation rounds. It was companies moving to the next stage, whereas in the last 6 months, that has declined to around 20%. This means a couple of things. One is that a lot of companies were extending, so they were still raising money, but they weren't graduating to the next round. They were extending their runway. They were raising what's called bridge rounds, so going back to the same investors and extending their runway. Another thing that could have happened too was that new companies were coming on, so not graduating to the next stage, but raising their first rounds of capital. And we're seeing this across all stages of investment, so not just in the growth stages, but also in the earlier stages as well. And in particular, saw the largest graduation declines in crops and alternative protein. Now, switching over to the exits, exits is obviously a really important sign of, climate tech health over time. What we will say, and what we'll caveat, is that it's still early. We've been tracking this space since 2020, 2019. It's only been a couple of years. On average, we've seen that it takes about 8 to 9 years, and even longer if it's a hard tech company, to exit. So we're still relatively early in the cycle, not expecting to see a ton of exits, but notably in 2023, exits did decline. They halved about. SPACs in particular declined 90%. So this was an exit path that many early stage companies would take to go public, where they were acquired by an already public company. There were some notable acquisitions in 2023, good notable and bad notable. So one example is Oxy acquiring Carbon Engineering. It was a $1.1 billion acquisition in direct air capture. It was interesting. That one's an interesting one to note too, because they'd been partnered for a while. And then there were some not so great outcomes, perhaps. Acquisitions aren't always good. So for example, Volta, which is an EV charging startup, they SPAC'd at a valuation of $2 billion, and then got acquired by Shell for $170 million. So there are a couple examples here where acquisitions are actually a pretty interesting exit path we've seen for companies where corporates have been the most active acquirers. And surprise, surprise, a lot of that is actually fueled by energy companies or O&G majors who are trying to diversify their energy mix. If we look at the investor data as well, so actually how many investors, how many unique investors are coming in to fund different sectors, different verticals, the most significant data point here is that fewer investors have actually been planting seeds in food and land use. And so the number of investors who have participated in food and land use deals actually declined for the first time. But we're seeing this interesting pickup in the industry vertical, where industry, as we spoke about before, there's always been that big mismatch between the amount of emissions relative to the amount of investment going in. We've started to see a pickup of investor interest as industrial decarbonization and CBAM, EU ETS takes hold in Europe particularly. All right, so we talked a lot about 2023. Doesn't seem like it was the best outcome. Investment overall was down 30%. What do we think is going to happen in 2024? So our 2024 outlook, number one, we think it's going to be survival of the fittest. This is a natural cycle in venture and growth. Not every company, unfortunately, makes it all the way to exit. It's natural to go through up and down cycles, but there will still be quality companies, unicorns that come out in climate tech, and we're starting to see the survival of the fittest now. The second is a sophisticating climate capital stack, and we'll talk about what that means. But for the most part, it's not just venture investors, it's not just early stage venture investors that are looking to invest in climate tech. And that's a really good sign, because that means there's a lot of dry powder or capital available to fund companies at the end of the journey, as long as they can kind of get across that gap. And then finally, we actually think 2024 is going to be an end of a wait and see period. And there's a couple reasons for that we'll talk about. And then finally, a little bonus, it seems like 2024 might be the year of energy. So survival of the fittest. Here we can see the count of bankruptcies and out of businesses that we've been tracking. You'll notice that actually 60% of the sectors, or 60% of the bankruptcies happened in more mature sectors, in batteries and autos and alternative protein. And that's natural, right? As these sectors mature, the companies that succeed will win. The companies that don't succeed might go out of business, and that's natural. So that's starting to play out now. The more mature sectors in climate tech are starting to see a culling of the herd. You know, companies getting to unicorn status or companies exiting the race. And for the companies that do stay in the race, the companies that do make it to scale, the climate capital stack is sophisticating. I think if you scan that QR code, this will actually take you to an interactive chart of all the most active investors we've tracked in climate tech. When we started doing this, we started tracking climate tech investors in 2020. It was a logo map of like 30 VCs, 30 early stage VCs. Now this has ballooned to over 300 investors, and these are not the only investors investing in climate tech. These are the active investors, ones who have invested in multiple companies, multiple deals in the last year. And what you'll see here, it's not just venture capital anymore. It's venture capital, it's growth in private equity, it's infrastructure funds, it's corporates as well, who are all building and launching new funds specifically allocated towards climate tech. And this is really important, even if you're an early stage founder, to be thinking about, you know, the capital journey that you are going to have to go on to build a big, impactful climate tech company. And what's really exciting now is there's a lot of institutional investors, such as the big brand name private equity shops like TPG, sovereign wealth funds like Temasek, as well as pension funds like CPPIB that are coming in and looking to invest in climate tech outside of just solar and wind. And so if you can make it over the gap, we think there's actually a lot of capital out there. We just published a dry powder report that tracked $82 billion of fresh capital raised since September 2023. So lots of capital out there. Hopefully, if the wait and see period ends, there'll be a lot of investments to make. Now, we did a survey in the newsletter at the end of last year to kind of test our readers on what they think. Obviously, this might be biased because the readers, for the most part, are interested in climate tech bouncing back, but it's pretty exciting to see, you know, over 80% of readers think that investment in 2024 will bounce back. And anecdotally, even in the first 4 months of this year, we've been speaking to founders, we've been speaking to investors. Everyone across the board feels like the market last year was pretty slow. Investors were trying to, you know, mostly keep their existing companies afloat versus funding new companies. But we're hearing at the start of this year, there's already been a big pickup in activity. Lots more deal activity, lots more founders coming back out to fundraise, and investors as well starting to deploy new capital. We also, in this survey, tried to get a sense of where readers feel like the capital is going to be flowing, where there's going to be interest this year from a sector standpoint. Pretty interestingly, more than 40% thought it would refocus on energy. And so we compared that to the percentage of investment that went into that sector in 2023. So it feels like there's going to be a pretty strong increase in companies working on the energy space. And in particular, maybe it's Oppenheimer, but nuclear seems to be in for 2024 as well. And I'll actually make an updated point to this. On Monday, we just published a newsletter talking about the opportunity and the challenge of data centers and AI as it relates to both emissions, but also power demand. And so all of a sudden, you know, we've spoken to a couple utilities. They've seen their forecasted power demand 6 to 9x. 6 to 9x. And data centers require 24/7 power. So we actually see there being a lot of opportunity for clean, firm power generation sources like nuclear, and geothermal as well, which may be a reason why there's been all of a sudden so much interest in those clean, firm power sources. That's it for the most part. Hopefully I hit 20 minutes, but the ending message I'll leave you all with is, you know, investment was down in 2023. However, we see there being a pretty exciting and large opportunity for climate tech in 2024 with the end of wait and see and with new opportunities as investors and founders alike come back to market and a pretty significant refocus on energy and specifically clean firm power. Thank you.
Kim, thank you very much indeed for an incredibly insightful keynote speech. Okay, it's now time for our second round of startups. And for this round, we will be focused on low carbon economy. A reminder that you can get involved with your questions using Mentimeter. The QR code will be up on the screen after each pitch. Right, please welcome, kicking us off for our low carbon economy round with Keith from NEOM.
We're NEOM, a team of nanoscientists, entrepreneurs, and engineers on a mission to eliminate emissions. We deliver on hydrogen's promise on the way to solving the ammonia pollution problem. It's clean ammonia on demand, and it delivers a cleaner future of energy, food, and fuel. And as you can probably tell from my surprise, that wasn't the slide that was supposed to come up. So a century ago, ammonia saved our world by doubling global food production. And ammonia can save us again today, thanks to patent-pending advances in nanotechnology. Okay. The hydrogen economy needs our help. The number there represents global investment in hydrogen. And despite all of this investment, these are the transport options. They're expensive, dangerous, and experimental at best. So how do we bring hydrogen's cosmic cost back down to Earth? By turning that hydrogen into ammonia. Ammonia is the key that unlocks the hydrogen economy. But first, we need a clean key. Ammonia today is precursor to 50% of global food, but over 96% of it is produced by burning fossil fuels. 450 megatons of annual emissions. So, hydrogen is too expensive and volatile to move at scale, and ammonia is centralized, monopolized, and in desperate need of decarbonisation. What we need is a better way to transport hydrogen. What we need is a cleaner and better way to make ammonia. What we have is the mighty Minion. The mighty Minion is a small-scale reactor that houses our novel nanocatalyst. It synthesizes clean ammonia at very low pressures. That means low energy usage and low emissions. It can be deployed on any site, and it cope at any scale. It's low capex and runs on clean energy. After 3 years proving the theory at Diamond Light Source, NEOM was formed at Carbon-13. Last year, we raised the seed round through AgFunder and DCVC, two Silicon Valley investors. And since then, we've delivered 2 prototypes and moved into our own lab facility near Oxford. Through Q2, we're optimizing the catalyst and testing the full system, ready for pilots later this year. The ammonia market today stands at $75 billion. Now that's projected to treble by 2050, with nearly all of that growth coming from low-carbon supply. Key emerging sectors are energy, where it's the optimal vector for hydrogen, and shipping, where it's the front runner for their net zero ambition. In terms of our roadmap, this year we're partnering hydrogen providers. In year 2, we begin selling clean ammonia to our off-takers, and in the outer years, we move on to clean fuel and through the broader supply chain. We already have ammonia offtake agreements in place and a letter of commitment for a 60-ton per day plant. On top of that, we have a government grant to support the scale-up of our catalyst production. We're raising a Series A later this year to fund us getting to ton-scale ammonia production and move and industrial pilots across our use cases. So to close, through NEOM's novel nanotechnologies, we can decentralize an industry currently monopolized by Russia and China, decarbonize a process responsible for 1 to 2% of global emissions, and democratize access to a cleaner future of energy, food, and fuel. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. You can now submit your questions using the QR code on screen, and that code, once again, 76085410. While we're waiting for the questions to come in, Keith, let's start with one about why you decided to focus on ammonia. Why do you think we're in a better place with that than hydrogen?
Yes, I think it all really comes down to the infrastructure and know-how. So, we've been handling ammonia for over 100 years, so we already know how to do it. We already have bunkering facilities and transport methods. So we already have the existing regulatory framework in place.
Okay. Moving on from that, a question in about ammonia being banned in many port authorities for its associated risks. How do you plan on addressing that?
Yeah, so there are obviously concerns around toxicity. There are concerns around NOx emissions. Again, I think I go back to the previous point. We have been dealing with ammonia for hundreds of years. So while there are concerns, it's far less flammable than hydrogen, and the storage requirements are far more sort of suitable to existing conditions. I think, hydrogen, you're either storing it at really high pressures or cryogenic temperatures.
Moving on, how do NEOM's unit economics stack up compared to fossil fuel ammonia?
I knew I'd get this question. So we're preparing a detailed data sheet. This event is maybe slightly too early for us to share information like this. But as we move into the second half of this year and go into our Series A raise, we'll be sharing lots of this information. So come and speak to me in a second, and you can take my details down, and we'll share the information as soon as it's ready.
What's the efficiency and max lifetime of one reactor?
I think the same question, same as the previous question. So come and speak to me. We're sharing lots of this information, ready for the Series A raise.
How are you different from some of the other green ammonia startups, asks one audience member.
Yeah, so I guess I'm not here today to badmouth other green ammonia startups. They're all doing great work. I'm here today to talk about NEOM. But again, similar to the piece on a data sheet, we're putting together some comprehensive competitor analysis, and we're going to be starting to issue a newsletter through the second half of the year that will contain all of this information. So we'll be sharing that with all of the investors and other interested parties as part of that.
We've had a question in about whether you can throw some light on the fundraise. How much are you raising, and what's your timeline?
Yes, so timeline-wise, second half of this year, so I appreciate that's somewhat vague, but sort of June, July time, we'll be kicking that off in anger. We've already been having some early conversations with our existing investors and some other interested parties, but it kicks off properly in the second half of the year. In terms of the amount, again, it's a question I get all the time, but this will be determined somewhat by the technology and the partnerships we have in place at the time. So we're kind of still working hard for the next few months, and we'll settle on a number closer to the time.
Okay. A question in about what your hydrogen and nitrogen sources are.
Yes, so it's hydrogen from water electrolysis and nitrogen from air. So we at the moment in our lab we have a 5 kilowatt electrolyzer, and we're piping that into a kilogram scale prototype. Access to green hydrogen is a challenge, but we've already had a lot of really advanced conversations with energy companies in the UK and in Europe. So that letter of commitment I mentioned is a European energy company, and they're really interested in us as ammonia as an energy vector for hydrogen.
We've had a question in about ammonia corroding pipes, and are you thinking about distribution?
So I suppose, at the moment we're thinking primarily about moving up the TRL level. So we're doing a lot of testing in our lab based on the 2 prototypes that we do have. And then we're focusing really on the commercialization. So we're spending a lot of time speaking to industry partners and other interested parties.
Keith, that brings us to time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next in this round, please give a very warm welcome to Adish from Gorilla.
This is rainwater. But when it falls on our cities, this is what ends up in our water bodies. Pollution builds up in our cities every day, containing microplastics from paints, tire particles, toxic hydrocarbons, heavy metals, and the list goes on. Every time it rains, a cocktail of these pollutants gets washed through our drainage networks and into our rivers untreated. In fact, 30% of all ocean pollution is mobilized by this very mechanism, making it one of the most urgent threats to our environment. And that's not all. With increasing downstream treatment costs, businesses are being charged for surface water drainage. And that's where Gorilla comes in. Gorilla is a retrofittable device that fits into existing roadside drains and captures this pollution at the first point of entry into the drainage network. When runoff enters into the device, it is separated into a concentrated slurry of contaminants that's left behind in the roadside drain, while a cleaner stream of water is allowed back into the drainage network. To make this happen, we have a patent-pending design that leverages a specialized internal geometry and the natural flow of the water using no membranes or moving parts, giving it a conservatively predicted lifetime of over 10 years. Currently, we have a working prototype that we've tested out in controlled environments with simulated runoff and have been able to achieve 98% efficiency for particle sizes of 100 microns and above. Unlike the competition, Gorilla retrofits seamlessly into the existing roadside drain infrastructure and their current maintenance protocol, making it the only affordable, scalable, and sustainable solution of its kind. With increasing number of regulations being brought in across the world, the global market size for runoff management is estimated to reach £27.8 billion by 2031, of which 4.6 billion is estimated to be the UK market. And with water-related agendas taking the limelight, we believe that this is the perfect opportunity to operate in this industry. With our focus on customers that own and manage roadside drains, primarily local councils, water companies, and landowners, we offer a tailor-made subscription-based service with tiered access to hardware and real-time data insights, providing ongoing customer value. And with lower pollutant and sediment loads into our water streams, Gorilla is able to help its customers with reductions in their trade effluent and surface water drainage components of their water bills, offsetting the cost of our device. We're a spin-out from Imperial College London and the Royal College of Art, with the founding team coming from diverse backgrounds spanning across design, engineering, business, and marketing. Alongside us, we also have the support of our advisors, who are industry-leading experts in the field of runoff management with decades' worth of experience. We're also backed by various incubators and organizations across the UK and have built strategic relationships with partners to help every step of our pipeline. Currently, we've secured a field trial partner, and we'll be testing our device in situ on a high-traffic road in London over the next couple of months. This is in line with our plans to be ready for manufacturing by Q2 of next year, for which we're looking to raise $450K before the end of this year. So get in touch with us to see how your support can help us get one step closer to building a more water-resilient future. Thank you.
Well done, and we welcome your team member from Gorilla. Right, time for audience questions. You'll see the QR code back on your screen. And let's start the one while we're waiting for them to come in on how often you need to replace the device.
Yeah, so essentially, we don't hold any of the contaminants within the device itself, but they drop to the bottom half of the gully pot, which acts as a buffer unit. And then the current infrastructure that already exists with the gully sucker, a massive truck with a vacuum in the back, comes and collects it. And we've estimated with the roads, with TfL having the most polluting roadside drains, would take about a year to fill up in the space that we have below.
Brilliant. We've had a question in about how much expertise is needed to change the filters.
Yeah, so going back to the previous point, you don't have to change the filter itself. It's just a matter of pulling the device out, collecting the contaminants from underneath, and putting the device back in. So we've tried to reduce the amount of effort that needs to happen from the drainage maintenance point of view and fit within the current maintenance regime.
Brilliant. We've had a question in asking, have you thought about adding filtration at a higher throughput downstream?
Yeah, so one of the main reasons we do it at this stage is because 90% of the pollution actually can be pulled out by just pulling out suspended solids, because at this stage, many of the chemicals that diffuse into the water through the drainage network are still attached to the suspended solids. So basically, we are using a physical process at this stage to pull out these. Otherwise, you'd need a chemical or an electric process much further down the line.
Which councils in the UK are already on board, asks one audience member, if any?
Yeah, so right now we are, we kind of secured a partnership with Earl's Court Development Company. So their development site span between 2 councils. So it's South Kensington, Chelsea, and Fulham, Hammersmith and Fulham. So these will be the 2 councils that we'll be collaborate with during the field trial.
Fantastic. Okay. What do you do with the filters after use?
Yeah, so going back to the previous point, we don't have to change out the filters. So we've predicted a lifetime of over 10 years with the kind of materials that we're using to create the device itself. So it's a matter of not changing the filters, but just collecting the contaminants that collect at the bottom.
And does it impact water flow?
Yeah, so essentially the flow rate through our device is actually 1.5 times that of the outflow pipe within the roadside drain that currently exists. So we wouldn't be the bottleneck, it would be the outflow pipe within the roadside drain itself.
We have a question in asking what type of filter you use.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that in terms of the technology. So because it's patented or patent pending, I won't be able to reveal much of it, but essentially we use capillary action and centrifugal separation as part of the philosophy that we use here.
Brilliant. Does the design have to be bespoke depending on the drainage system?
So right now, all the TfL roads has a more standardized design, and that's what we used to design our prototype, the working prototype. But we designed the product in a way that's modular, so it's adapt to different design and dimensions. So make it more scalable as well, so we can have a global market.
Brilliant. How are the pollutants disposed of?
Yeah, so we're trying to fit within the current maintenance protocol that already exists, trying to reduce the barrier for entry. And as part of that current maintenance protocol, the gully suckers actually take these contaminants to a wet waste treatment facility where they're processed. But in the future, we're looking at actually mining for materials from these because of the value of the materials that might be there.
And that brings us to time. Thank you very much indeed. Well done. Thank you to Team Gorilla, and as with all of the teams that you see pitching here this afternoon, they will all be in the networking space following this event so that you can ask any questions of them directly. Right, next in our low carbon economy round, please put your hands together for Koji from Key Hydrogen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Koji, co-founder and CEO of Key Hydrogen, and I'm here to answer a simple but interesting question. What is the problem with green hydrogen? So a lot of us in the climate community have heard about the decarbonization potential of hydrogen, but the reality is the world already produces 95 million tons of hydrogen every year. And the problem is over 99% of that is still derived from fossil fuels, or what we call gray or black hydrogen. And that leads to direct emissions that's comparable to the entire emissions of the aviation sector. The clean alternative is called green hydrogen, so hydrogen without the associated carbon emissions. Today, the only commercially feasible way to do this is called water electrolysis, so using renewable electricity to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. But it's simply too expensive, costing 4 times more than gray hydrogen, and that's why no one's really producing green hydrogen at scale. And the reason it's so expensive is because it's an incredibly energy-intensive process. So we're not going to reach cost parity through incremental efficiency gains. We need a game-changing solution, and that's exactly what we're here to achieve. Our patented technology is called biomass electrolysis, and we take a radically different approach. So we source the hydrogen from waste biomass, and by leveraging the inherent energy in the biomass, we need up to 75% less energy to produce the same amount of hydrogen compared to water electrolysis. In addition, we make valuable chemical co-products that we can sell as an additional revenue stream. And through those 2 big advantages is how we can achieve $2 a kilogram hydrogen production costs, cost parity with fossil fuel-based hydrogen. And we have a tailor-made team to deliver this technology. Dr. Michael Stanton did his master's PhD at Cambridge, where he continued on doing his research on this novel waste-to-hydrogen technology. I designed and developed the UK's largest hydrogen plant worth $800 million. And Dr. Carl Banbury has over a decade of startup experience specializing in commercializing emerging technologies. And we have two amazing scientists who joined our team with deep expertise in electrochemistry and biomass. To date, we've raised 1.3 million pounds through both equity and grants, including a competitive Innovate UK Smart Grant. We've built our lab proof of concept, so we've demonstrated this at lab scale. And we're taking that funding this year to further expand our IP portfolio. And what we're really focusing on is developing our first out-of-lab MVP, producing 1 kilogram a day of hydrogen. That's commercial grade. We already secured a paid off-taker for the hydrogen. And later this year and into the next year, we'll be opening up our £4 million seed round, and that will go towards scaling our technology even further to an on-site pilot. I think I went very quickly, but happy to answer any questions. But thank you very much for listening. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Well done. Time for questions now, and let's kick off with one whilst audience questions are coming in about how you compete against other waste-to-hydrogen technologies. Tell us more.
Yes, perfect. So there are other waste-to-hydrogen technologies. The most common one is called gasification. It's a mature but pretty rudimentary technology. You're essentially burning a lot of the biomass, and what you get is a mixture, a syngas, so hydrogen, but also carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. You then need further gas separation, gas treatment steps, carbon capture system if you want to prevent the CO2 from being released. Whereas we are going from waste to hydrogen in one step. Hydrogen is our only gaseous product. We don't need further treatment steps for that. All the carbon stays in liquid form, and that's what we separate out into a useful chemical commodity.
Brilliant. We've had our first question in asking how this compares to pink hydrogen in terms of price.
I do love all these colors of hydrogen. So pink hydrogen, some people call it, I guess, nuclear hydrogen, so derived from powering it from nuclear energy. So that's not really done at scale, but essentially it's still water electrolysis. So it's kind of in the range of $6 to $8 a kilogram, where we're targeting $2 a kilogram. We see it's a huge challenge to get to cost parity with fossil fuels through water electrolysis, because essentially all the costs are on the OPEX, it's on the energy cost. So you're reliant on extremely cheap electricity prices. And unless that occurs, we're talking about like a 3-4-fold decrease, you're just really not going to get to cost parity.
Okay. The next question asks, can you clarify what you mean by biomass and how do you source biomass?
Yes. So biomass, the feedstock is quite a wide class of materials we call lignocellulosic biomass. It can range from side streams from industries like breweries, paper pulp industry, agriculture, woody waste. We're starting with these industrial side streams because the composition is more uniform. We know what's in it. You don't get these kind of mixed contaminants. But certainly, as we scale the technology, we'd be looking to widen that funnel, so that also starts getting into that IP portfolio as well.
What is the energy efficiency of your process, and what are waste, also what wastes produced, because biomass will create some?
Yeah, so we can start talking about some of the numbers. So current water electrolysis requires about 50 kilowatt hours of energy input to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen. The theoretical limit, so getting that down to 100% efficiency, means 39 kilowatt hours to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen. Biomass electrolysis has been lab demonstrated down to 10 kilowatt hours per kilogram, so far below what's even theoretically possible with water electrolysis. We don't see us getting to that really ideal state, but at a system level, we're still targeting 25 kilowatt hours a kilogram.
A question in about how large a site would be required to produce this at scale versus traditional hydrogen or energy-producing sites.
So we aim to be quite competitive with traditional alkaline electrolyzer systems in terms of what we'd say current density. So the amount of space you need to produce the hydrogen. And we are really leveraging off-the-shelf alkaline electrolyzer components. So we're not looking to manufacture these special bespoke electrolyzers. We're leveraging existing growing supply chains.
And that brings us to time. Koji, thank you very much indeed. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Our penultimate pitch in this round. Please give a very warm welcome to Abiel from Voila.
Think about a bag of food waste. After a day, a week, or maybe a month. It will be smelly, it will attract flies, and it will be disgusting for sure. Now, food waste is a messy problem, and once it's mixed with other waste, it makes everything extremely hard, if not impossible to recycle. Hi, I'm Abiel from Voila, a company working to make food waste recycling easy. Our innovation, the Voila X1, utilizes targeted microorganisms together with specialized mechanical design to automatically separate food waste from any other waste, turning them into liquid gold, raw material for energy production within hours on site. Now, our innovation even allows food waste to be stored for months without any smell. Significantly, delay the collection frequency from once per week to once per month, saving 95% of labor, logistics, and CO2 emission. The Voila X1 is deployed and designed for B2B food waste producers, office, shopping center, hotel, cafe restaurants, and residential estates. Over the last few years, we have deployed the machines in different sites, set up our own manufacturing plant locally in the UK to produce the machine, and been on the business front page. According to one of our customers, it's the best thing that happened for a very, very long time. Exceeded expectation, simple to operate, cleaner, quicker, game-changing, world-changing, simply amazing. So how do we actually use the machine? It's all like magic. So first, you empty the microorganism kit into the Voila X1. It basically turns it into an artificial stomach. Think about your own stomach. Food goes in, digested, plastic goes in, vomited. Exactly the same. So this is a time where you can dump both food waste and other waste into the machine. Food waste goes in, digested, other waste goes in, vomited, separated. So it's as easy as turning on a tap and pump the food waste out because it's liquefied for storage. The food waste then can be stored for a very, very long time. This one is a tuna spaghetti for a year without any smell. And then this is a time where you decide, call us, ping us, email us, to come and pick it up, to send our fleet, to pick it up the slurry, and sell it to energy producers to produce hydrogen, biogas, and electricity. This is the different use case study that we have deployed the Voila X1 in. So you can see that there are arcades, some random TfL stations on the high street, indoor, outdoor, or these kind of use case study where you can think about there are food waste or their waste. This year, we're piloting with national infrastructures like Heathrow Terminal 5. And we're now looking for many, many organizations that deals with food waste to become our pilot customers. So it could be whether you have a staff canteen, it could be whether you produce a lot of food waste in a cluster of places, or you simply have a lot of customers that dump a mixture of both food waste and other waste into your premises. If you're interested, let's have a chat afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Well done. OK, time for questions now. And we'll kick off with one about how this compares to conventional waste collection methods.
Sure. So in terms of London-wise, the market rate is £150. We charge £100. That's how comparable.
And then a question on how you plan to scale manufacturing.
Sure. So the first prototype was built on my patio. The second one was built in Slough, where we did a little bit more manufacturing one. We just signed a lease for 2 years in Battersea. We're also partnering with 2 manufacturing partners, one in Peterborough and one in Bradford, up north.
What chemicals do you use for removing plates?
Sorry, there's plastics.
Plastics, that makes far more sense.
Plastics. OK. We don't use any chemical. It's a biological process. So basically, we digest the food waste from the plastic itself. Think about like a packaged sandwich. So the sandwich is organic, separated. The packaging plastics, we can't do anything about it, so we just simply separate it. We don't use any chemical.
Do you foresee domestic application?
Yes, we do, but not yet. So B2B is already a lot. So for example, in our T5 applications at Terminal 5 in Heathrow, we can only deal with 50 kg per day. They produce 1.8 tons per day. So we have to deal with B2B first, and then we go to domestic.
Fundraising goals and commercialization timeline, what are they?
We closed one angel round. We got approached by a deal, by a VC. We're closing it, and then commercialization, we're already commercializing it.
What kind of synergies do you see with household composting, if any?
Yes. So wait until we can have the capability to re-engineer the whole thing to B2C. So this thing, for example, this demonstration model we put it here, is basically the thing that we want to make it like a scalable at a small scale for a household one. So composting-wise, it doesn't really align to what we do because we believe that even composting, it takes a very long time. Number 2, it smells. So, and it uses a lot of energy. We believe in microorganisms that works when I'm sleeping, when you're sleeping, and that's the thing in a harmful, non-harmful behavior. So hopefully we can have the capacity to do it, but not now.
And presumably this will be available for people to take a look at on the networking table later on. OK, another question in. How do you make profit? Do you sell or rent your products out?
Yes, we are not a product company. We started off as one. We're now a service company. We sell or lease the main product. We then offer a service where we offer the logistic, come pick up the treated food waste, and that's how we make profit.
Which bacteria are used to separate food waste from other types of waste? Do you need a range of bacterial species to deal with several different food types?
Sure. I spent 5 years, my co-founder spent 20 years. I have 19 seconds. It's not enough time. Let's talk about afterwards.
OK, what happens to the non-food waste?
Sure. A huge amount of plastics, we sell it to plastic recyclers. Small amount, we put it right back into the bin, recycling bins on site.
Brilliant. And can the microorganisms survive temperature extremes, and will their productivity change in summer versus winter use?
Yes, if you think about mold, the optimum temperature is hot, humid, and wet. Exactly the same, microbes. So 30 Celsius to 55 Celsius, degrees Celsius. So it's designed for the UK, so the thing has insulated. So yeah, it's OK.
Brilliant, that brings us to time. Thank you, well done.
Thank you.
And of course, any further questions, each of our teams has a dedicated standing table in the networking space, so you can put those to them directly. OK, that brings us on to the last but by no means pitch in this round. Please give a very warm welcome to Joyita from Samudra.
Hi, we are Samudra Oceans. And this is Oliva, our electronics engineer, who's holding something I'll tell you about shortly. Did you know that seaweed farms can take up to 20 times more carbon than even tropical forests? They can revitalize coastal economies, creating thousands of white and blue-collar jobs, and they form the entry point of raw materials like bioplastics, biopackaging, pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, and a $20 billion market that the OECD forecasts in the next 5 years from seaweed farms alone. So if this is great for the planet, great for economy, and great for other products, low-carbon products, why don't we do it? Well, that's because it's really hard to do. Most seaweed farms are offshore. You get licensed to operate in a region that's not used by other commercial activities, which means by definition they're hard to reach. Imagine -8 degrees in Cornwall, leaving your wife and kids at 3 a.m. just to go check if the farm's all right and come back at 6 p.m. That's literally the life of so many sea farmers. So it's very hard to scale. So we thought we will create robotics farming that will actually enable these farmers to do that in the comfort of their own home. So meet Nira. This device is a robotic sond that goes under the surface of water, and it basically measures light, salinity, temperature. It has a camera that takes pictures, and all of that gets sent back through this buoy to the surface, which has solar panels for power and communication with satellites as well as 4G. What that means is, in a sense, you're monitoring your farm from hundreds and thousands of kilometers away. So instead of being on a boat on a cold, rainy day and freezing and falling sick and wasting fuel and money and labor, you would literally be having, well, hopefully a cup of tea. And what happens if you're not looking at your dashboard, you're not looking at this fantastic data that we like to look as engineers, but maybe not farmers? Well, that's when you get a text. Good morning, Charlie, your lines are entangled. Do you want to get on a boat today? And when you get that text, you get on a boat, because it means this is grade 1 disaster coming up. And if you don't get that text, you don't have to, unless you really want to. And this reduces the number of boat trips and operational maintenance expenditure to 15% of what it was before, 15%. Imagine what it does to the liquidity of the farmers, how big the farms can be, how much bigger can they own, how much can they spend on seed and modern automation. Basically, we can make sea farming was what happened to land farming 50 years ago. A total revolution in scale. And not only can we do it for seaweed, it actually works for crustaceans, even marine restoration projects, pretty much the same hardware with a slightly different software, although we have just started with only seaweed farms. I want you to know that the team behind this absolutely crazy idea aren't people who are doing this for the first time. We've done a bunch of crazy stuff. This is my 4th venture in deep tech. My co-founder, Alex, has been in marine sciences for a while, and all the others have also built and exited companies in the past. And between us, we have 7 exits in deep tech in the last 5 to 10 years. So we can think of crazy ideas. We can pull it off, rest assured. So how can you believe that this is actually happening? Well, I can tell you that's happening because in 15 months of our birth, from conception to today, we are already deployed in 500 hectares across England, Scotland, and Jamaica. And we currently own a test bed in north of Scotland, which is the biggest seaweed farm in UK, over 150 hectares of our own that Samudra owns from Crown Estate. In addition to that, we're deployed in Cornish seaweed, Norfolk seaweed. We have 3 joint ventures in Jamaica, and we have a couple of other farms that we're working with in various other parts of Scotland and potentially Wales coming up very soon. We have an international pipeline with Oman, Philippines, Indonesia, Nova Scotia in the month of June, and potentially India and Sri Lanka as well in the next 12 months. But all of this requires capital, and that's why we are fundraising. About 1/3 of this round is already committed. We have $1 million, and we're looking for another $2 million to close the round. If you want to participate, let us know. You'll be in very good company. Our last round was done by 3 of the best VCs in UK, and we are very glad to have them on board. And this round has incredible angels as well. Some of whom are here, so you can chat with them as well. But there are many other ways to be with Samudra on this journey. We're looking for people to hire, people to collaborate with, farms that want to experiment with remote monitoring, and any other thesis that seems relevant. It's a really big, hard job. We know taking out 10 megatons directly from seaweed every year is not going to be a small task to achieve in the next 3 years. We need all your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Well done on a brilliant pitch. Time for questions now. And we kick off with one while we're waiting for our audience questions to come in about how you will make money.
Yep. So we've just grown 20 tons of food-grade kelp using our automation. We are harvesting next week, and it's already prepaid for. So we work on revenue share with the farmers for now. But to be honest, we could be a straightforward tech company like John Deere of the ocean, just buy the tech and the software and pay. But for now, we are doing partnerships because this is a new tech, and farmers like to have a bit of a service and a package around it.
We've had a question in asking how much area one robot or buoy can cover.
So this entire unit, could you come here to the light? This entire unit amongst itself, he's dying. This is very heavy, and he's dying, right? He's like, this is not what I signed up for my job. So between this unit, they're like kind of connected, and this is on the surface, this is below the surface, and this moves only with wave energy. And the distance it covers, it's probably not going to be more than a few meters in circle. But you don't need a lot of these because you don't want to measure the ocean gradient of value for like every half a meter. So you probably want to do a perimeter and a bit in the center. It's also the shape of the farm and the complexity. So different polygons require different numbers. In general, anything under 1 hectare, 2 units should be good. Anything between 25 to 40 hectares, 3 to 5. 150 hectares, which is our mega farm in Oban, Scotland, would be about 20 of these. And we haven't seen farms bigger than that. So.
Okay. Would you need to upskill and train farmers? Are there any risks to current farmers' jobs?
It's a really great question. Actually, the exact reverse. This creates an outstanding number of jobs in the coastal economies it's in. Most of the time, you would look about 5 to 10, probably 15 people on a seaweed farm in a particular region. Almost 50% of them only turn up for 3 days during harvest. They're not needed. Whereas with our potential, because they scale the farms to 100 times bigger, you suddenly have created a lot more white and blue collar jobs with checkbox multiple UN SDGs. And that's also, we've been funded by various UN organizations because of this coastal revitalization part of it. So it actually creates a lot more jobs. Do we need to upskill and train? Not really, because it basically you throw and it works, and they all know how to use a smartphone app that just texts you. But do they need to be a bit comfortable, not to operate, but just to trust us? For sure. So we work very closely with them because sea farmers are like, well, is this going to work? Why do you want me to they have lots of inhibitions. So yes, we need to bring them on board, but not so much to operate, more for psychological safety.
Okay. How much does one unit cost?
So 1 unit would cost anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 pounds, depending on the module. So these are modular. You don't need all the modules in every single part of the farm. Sometimes you need cameras. Sometimes you need only lights. So it depends. So every module is not fully loaded. So it's 5 to 10K. But the way we've structured it is we allow people to pay over 2 years, and it includes the subscription to the app as well as the dashboard. So you can turn it into a monthly SaaS for 2-year retention, which gives us enough time to get feedback and get better for the next iteration as well. That's the model.
Okay. Talk to us about your considerations for the environment and biodiversity, especially with monocrop seaweed.
Yeah, that's absolutely a wonderful question. What we found, and we've learned this too, is that there is rarely monocrop seaweed. All our seaweed farmers grow crustaceans. There's rarely anyone who's just growing seaweed, because when you get license for a sea farm, you get license for the seabed, and you have the entire column of water. And so you're not just going to grow things on the top. You're going to grow things everywhere. That's just value for money. So everyone has oysters and mussels. And the good thing is our device can kind of monitor all of them: dissolved oxygen, pictures, temperature, all of the same things. So you can have multiple crops monitored by a single device. We are yet to see pure monoculture. To be honest, almost everyone does multiple things. We've gone with that. But if someone were to do a huge monoculture farm, like 1,000 square kilometers, would we work with them? I think it would be a great problem to have, that they're going to take out carbon at a huge level, and we can work on project level and look at marine net gains, et cetera. But that problem hasn't yet happened. So.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to relieve you of carrying that very heavy device now. So thank you very much indeed. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Well done to Team Samudra and to the rest of our second group of innovators who all did a brilliant job of pitching to you. Once again, we'll now just take a few moments to allow you to score each of the teams using the QR code you can see on the screen now. The website address is menti.com, and that code, if you do need to enter it, is 7608. 5410, 7608 5410, and if you need to, you're having problems with it, just click refresh and it should work for you. So I'll give you a few moments before we move on to do just that. Okay, for our final session this afternoon, our focus is on system efficiencies. We're going to get straight back into it with our first pitch in this round. And just a reminder, please make sure that you have Menti ready once again to submit your questions after each pitch. So, kicking us off for this final round, please put your hands together for Alex from Zori Tech.
Every second 1 truckload of textiles goes to landfill or incineration somewhere in the world. You've already heard that the fashion and textiles industry is hugely resource intensive, accounting for up to 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions. But in spite of this, 87% of materials used are wasted in this way. These materials are a complex mix of many different fibers and blends. New technologies that could recycle up to 70% of these into new materials are rapidly scaling, but they require highly sorted inputs. And today, it's not possible to accurately achieve this. Today, only 1% of materials used in clothing are recycled into new clothing. That's why our technology at Zoratex is addressing this bottleneck, enabling the sorting of mixed materials ready for fiber recycling. It combines innovations in machine vision and AI with our highly curated and large data set. This is used to image, uniquely fingerprint, and sort fabric, clothing, textiles. The live data is integrated into our platform to optimize the availability of those feedstocks for fiber recycling. Our technology enables a game-changing level of identification and sorting accuracy across the many fibers, blends, and contaminants found in fashion. Used textile sorters transform damaged and unwearable clothing, which makes up to 50% of collections in Europe, into highly sorted inputs for fiber recycling with 5 to 10 times higher revenues. Textile recyclers access the high quality of traceable feedstocks that they desperately need to scale. And replacing virgin materials with recycled ones reduces the carbon, water, and waste impacts of fashion. Our revenues come from hardware sales, subscriptions to our fingerprinting predictive models, and volume-based licensing of our data platform. The industry is at a tipping point. New legislation in the EU is pending. A new bill in the US includes $14 billion support for circular textiles. The global textile recycling feedstock market is set to grow to $20 billion, and fiber recycling capacity grow 20-fold by 2030. One example of this is H&M's recent commitment to buy $600 million worth of circular polyester from their own new joint venture, which is building 12 industrial-scale circular polyester plants globally over the next 7 years. Delivering this is a team from fashion and tech. My background, I'm Alex, is 15 years in fashion sourcing and manufacturing for major brands and retailers. Dominic has spent 20 years developing and deploying AI-based imaging systems and building full-stack solutions, and we're supported by advisors from across fashion, tech, and waste, including the world-renowned Alan Turing Institute. Since launch, we've won 3 Innovate UK grants. We've developed and built our first prototype, receiving great customer feedback, and established a commercial R&D partnership with a leading sorter. We're currently building our minimum viable product demonstrator, and we'll be raising £500,000 pre-seed investment to launch our first product next year. We would love to speak to investors interested in joining our fast-moving and exciting journey. Since I started talking, 200 truckloads of textiles have been landfilled or incinerated somewhere in the world. Our technology can help stop that. It's time for landfill to go out of fashion. Thank you.
Alex, well done. Time for questions now, and the QR code is on the screen behind us, so you can get your questions in now. Let's start with one as they're coming in, about why it's so hard, Alex, to sort textiles.
So textiles are a much more complex substrate than other materials because they're made of mixed fibers and blends. So more than half of what we wear is blended. And you can't tell this by hand. The existing industry that's established for textile collection and sorting is based around reuse. That's very manual, and you can't tell the fiber composition that way. On top of this, the garment labels that give you fiber composition, they've been found to be between 40 to 50% inaccurate, so you can't rely on that. And that's the same problem that RFID digital passports face over the coming years, which is why we're focused on finding the truth in the moment.
Okay. We've had a question in asking how you're sourcing the data used by your technology.
We are building our own data set. We have already a data set of thousands of different materials and collecting all the information around that. So yeah, that's our own proprietary information.
Okay. What are the expected volumes of sorting, presuming you're receiving funding over the next 5 years?
In terms of, off the top of my head, I'd need to refer back to what that looks like, but we expect to, over the next 5 years, hit a turnover of about 40 million, and that's split between our sorting hardware and predictive model and our data information. But I'll pick that one up later if somebody wants to come to me.
Okay, and of course, you will be on your stand during networking, so you can ask directly. We've had a question about the next step in your journey. What will the 500K investment be used for?
The 500K would be used particularly to build the team and to develop the platform further.
Moving on to our next question coming in, and one about how you compare to competitors.
So compared to competitors, there were in particular Motorola. So Motorola is a handheld device. It's cheap, which is great, but it is inefficient because it's all done sort of handheld, whereas we're on a moving conveyor. But the thing with these devices, they're single spectra. We're using hyperspectral imaging, which creates many more data points and can get a much more accurate prediction of the fiber composition. And that's super important to the fiber recyclers. They need accuracy. The competitors are using single and multispectral. We're using hyperspectral, but also in terms of the competition, they're looking at the moment, they cover about 9 pure fibers and a handful of blends. We are looking at the full gamut, 20 plus fibers, all the blends. Actually, if you take 20 plus fibers and put them into a multitude of 5 plus blends, you get more than 20,000 different combinations. We are addressing that.
Okay. What fiber properties do you have to sort against?
So each recycler has a very specific recipe and requirement for their feedstocks. So it depends according to the individual fiber recycler what they need, whether that's just high composition of cellulosics or polyester with particular contaminants that they can and can't accept in particular percentages. So there is every recycler is different.
Okay. And does sorting need an assembly line for your process, and where do you have it?
So we won't be sorting ourselves. We're providing the hardware and the software to do that. We aim to make it both accessible in price and retrofittable so that it can be mounted over existing conveyors or fit easily into existing plants. And in terms of the actuation, we haven't currently developed that because we can see that as state of the art, whether it's robotics or air jet. At the moment, we're focused on sorters where they're already using manual, and then we'll build and evolve into that with the speed afterwards. But for now, accuracy is everything.
That brings us to time. Well done, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Next, please welcome to the stage for the next pitch in your system efficiencies round, Mahesh and Niyam from Econia.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Mahesh, and this is my son, Niyam. We're Econia. We're trying to enable the use of reuse of construction materials. I've been a property developer for 25 years, and I've seen waste firsthand over that period. But I was still extremely shocked to learn that 60% of all UK waste comes from my sector. That's 60%, which equates to 120 million tons. Now, a proportion of that can be reused and salvaged, and it should be. Another shocking statistic is post-COVID, we've seen a 45% increase in costs. Now, that's primarily due to geopolitical and supply chain shocks, but nonetheless, it hits everyone's bottom line. MBA architects undertook an office refurbishment recently where they identified the potential reuse of fire doors. After extensive research and ensuring their compliance with current building regs, they were able to reuse them and save their client £200,000 together with 4 tons of carbon. Now, there is a commercial case for reusing materials. This is a small example, but it can be scaled up. We have therefore created Econia, which is an online marketplace to help connect buyers of such materials with suppliers who have them.
So the first steps are curating marketplace for both new and reused materials. So why are we also looking at new? Well, currently there's not enough good quality secondhand stock, and there's obviously a lot more building that we need to do in this country, especially with the housing crisis. And so the way we like to think about it is if we can capture the material at source, we can ensure that these new developments are designed with reuse in mind. So if we think back to the MBA example, let's say they needed 100 doors and they could reuse 20. Well, where are they going to source the other 80 from? And that's kind of where we come in. By capturing the data at source around compliance, warranty, and material information, we make it easier to redeploy and resell that material in the future. The goal being that that door could be resold 3 or 4 times on our platform throughout its life, which also brings us repeat business. So the way we like to think about it is almost like a used car, right? So one with a full service history does not only sell for a higher price, it's also much easier to sell because you can put your trust in the product. The business model is really simple to start. We just take a 5% commission on every sale on the platform, and we're looking to expand into financing and advertising products as we grow to scale and we get some volume.
So Econia is really the first piece of the jigsaw for the circular economy as we see it. It's an enabler to help secure and procure materials for secondary use, where they're reused currently from salvage yards or demolition contractors, or sourced virgin, but have an end-of-life and circular strategy. But to do this, we do recognize a shift in mindset from a design perspective. We need designers to specify such materials, together with plans that show disassembly of a building and ultimate salvaging those materials for secondary reuse. We see many value-added streams. We've already discussed the cost and saving money. But compliance together with data capture should be a lot easier and help with delivery of the projects. One interesting fact we're seeing is cheaper finance. For buildings which are low in carbon and sustainable, there is cheaper funding on the horizon.
So we currently have an MVP and we're looking for pilot projects. So if you're an asset owner or asset manager or in charge of procuring construction materials, we'd love to talk to you. Even better if you're in the office, retail, or rental housing sector, because we think those are what fit most naturally with what we're trying to do. We believe that in the future, this will be the standard way to procure construction materials, and hopefully together, we can turn London into a real-life Lego set. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That brings us on to questions. And as the audience get their questions in using the QR code on screen, let's start with one about what sets you apart from others trying to do this.
Okay, so I think the main thing that what we're trying to do to start with is combining that new material piece. So my dad's been a developer for 30 years. We've looked at this on projects that we have, and there's currently not enough materials, or it's the wrong type, or whatever. There's a bunch of problems. But if we can combine it with the right new materials as well, and capture that data so we can reuse that in the future, we can actually fulfill the requirements of the project and actually do so in a timely manner.
Okay. The questions come in asking, how do you manage and differentiate between various construction waste streams?
So that's very difficult to do at the moment. You know, buildings aren't designed currently for disassembly. So normally you put a bulldozer through it and put in a skip. So there are certain elements like steel and certain timber which can be reused currently. But this is the problem. We're still building bespoke buildings for one-time use. We have to change that to allow for disassembly in the future. And therefore, the materials we use today should have a secondary life. And that will help separate the waste.
Brilliant. Next question asks, what partnerships do you need to succeed?
Yeah, so I think one of the main things that we struggle to find at the start was a good supply side, right? How do we get these reused materials to start with? And we've actually been talking to a demolition contractor in South London. They specialize in office kind of soft strip, so the kitchenettes, the furniture, the carpet tiles, and they go through millions and millions of tons of waste a year. So just an interesting stat for you, they do 15 million a year in revenue, and they spend 8 million on disposal costs. So any kind of thing that they can do to reduce that 8 million goes straight to their bottom line. So not only can they do something that commercially makes sense, it's also much, much better for the planet.
Okay. How many builders are you targeting? And is this industry such tech savvy to utilize a social platform?
So I think it's not tech savvy, not at my generational level anyway. It's a two-way marketplace. So I think we need suppliers, and we're finding the right. So Econia will be a curated marketplace. I will only onboard suppliers which fulfill what I think we should be doing, which are circular and sustainable. And the demand side, we need developers like me, primarily SME at this stage, but then designers, contractors, and the demand side of the equation. And I think together, demand and supply will grow.
Okay. Is your product MVU operating outside the UK?
No.
Short and sweet. Do you have any funding or investment requirements?
Not at the moment, so we're bootstrapping for now, but always interested to hear, particularly around strategic opportunities that may come up.
Can I just add to that?
Please do.
We're not looking for funding as such, but it's more strategic. We need to partner with people like our asset owners, asset users, but in terms of councils, institutions, people who can actually help us strategically to grow this, because individually it's going to be impossible.
Okay. We've had a question in asking, how do you convince companies to sell materials on your platforms? Because they might want to use landfills to avoid the risk of having to stock materials for long periods of time.
Yeah, it's a good question. If I go back to the example that I said about the demolition contractor, the cost of storage is much less than, as you can imagine, £8 million a year. So they're willing to try out. They've invested in like a small warehouse facility. It's about 10,000 square foot to try this out. Landfill taxes keep going up almost every year. So they all notice and they see a need to innovate in that area.
Brilliant. That brings us to time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well done. Okay, that brings us on to our next pitch of the afternoon. Please give a very warm welcome to Joseph from Clip.
Every day in the UK, more than 10 restaurants shut down because they can't afford to stay open. The main reason for this is huge energy bills, which in some cases went up 700% last year. I just want you to take a moment to picture your favorite restaurant shutting its doors forever. We can prevent this by optimizing electricity use in the hospitality industry. This week, we visited Gianluca, owner of La Pizza restaurant. He runs an electric pizza oven which makes some delicious pizza, but is also pushing his bills past £20,000 each year. That's more than 4 times the average for medium-sized businesses. He needs some savings. And Gianluca is not alone. We're hearing the same things from other managers of restaurants and pubs in London, some of the largest consumers of commercial electricity. They want to reduce their consumption and meet environmental targets. They want to know where their electricity is being used and wasted so they can maximize the effects of their energy and money-saving efforts. And they want to assess the impact of new equipment purchases through cost-benefit analyses. This is our solution, Clip. Clip is a deep learning-enabled sensor which tells businesses how much electricity each of their individual appliances is using. It then provides them actionable insights and advice so they can reduce their consumption. Our sensor lowers the barriers to entry for data collection and accurate appliance-specific monitoring with safe and easy self-install,
no electrician required. This is non-intrusive and non-disruptive to business, so it can be installed at any time. We showed Gianluca this easy installation and that all of the information will be available at his fingertips through our app and web dashboards. We estimate Clip will save the average UK restaurant £2,900 on their energy bills. Some restaurants that have maximized energy efficiency improvements have managed to cut their bills by 40%. We'll sell to them with an upfront hardware cost and an ongoing software subscription. Targeting our beachhead market of restaurants and pubs in the UK, with Clip in 4,500 premises, we generate an annual revenue of £6.5 million. As we grow, we'll harness an additional revenue stream from the sale of aggregated data insights. I'm Joseph. I've been lucky enough to work with my co-founders, Anna and Freya, for the past few years at Imperial College London, where we've developed the design and engineering expertise to build Clip. We're supported by various accelerators and fellowships that have provided us the opportunity to meet valued mentors and advisors who are currently helping to fill our gaps around business strategy and commercialization. We are looking for pilot partners with multi-site hospitality businesses who can trial Clip with us. This will inform a larger 50-device pilot that we'll be raising £250,000 for later this year. If you know somebody who needs to optimize their electricity use to potentially save their business, then get in touch.
Joseph, thank you very much indeed, and we welcome your team member on stage for questions now too. And let's start one with the advantages of Clip compared to a smart meter.
So a smart meter in the UK samples at 1 hertz. We're sampling at more like 500 hertz. So smart meters don't have the data granularity to be able to do accurate appliance-specific monitoring. They also, in the UK, we've seen the huge problems with the smart meter rollout. So that's why the easy installation is a huge factor, because things like missed appointments and the problems of dealing with getting an electrician in to fit these things can cause huge problems to actually just scaling and getting these out into the world.
Okay, if we can move on to the next question, but while we're waiting for that, how does it recognise how much energy is being used by all the different appliances?
Yeah, so we're taking recordings, high-frequency recordings of current and voltage, and actually then using deep learning, we can extract the signals of individual appliances. So those high frequencies enable us to identify the different current frequencies when different appliances turn on, and we can then assign power to the different appliances and tell people exactly how much energy each of the appliances are using.
Leading on from that question and asking how exactly does it reduce energy requirements?
So the International Energy Agency has done some research, and they say that the main 2 ways that it is used is through feedback loops and through real-time kind of notifications and monitoring. And some real-world examples, they used non-intrusive load monitoring, which is this appliance-specific feedback on a restaurant, and actually managed to find that the exhaust of the air conditioning system was on constantly and using up a huge amount of energy that they wouldn't have been able to find otherwise, and were able to cut that down by 97%.
I had a question in asking if it's suitable for home use.
Yes, so it would be suitable for home use, and in fact we initially looked at developing this for home use and would like to develop it for homes in the future. But the fact is that kitchens, restaurants use significantly more energy, so with a single device we can have a much bigger impact, so that's where we're starting.
Are there plans to partner with energy companies?
Down the line, we would really want to be partnering with energy companies and potentially, for example, white labeling the hardware. We have spoken to some energy companies already, like the Octopus Centre for Net Zero, but they were immediately proposing kind of 1,000 device trials, and so after a few more conversations, we realized that we just need to be a bit further along the journey before working with those big partners.
We've had a question in asking whether installing a clip will impact the warranty and guarantee of appliances.
We hope that it would be able to and work with appliances in this way, because currently the warranties and guarantees will typically be around kind of 2 years. But actually we see that most of these appliances can last for 10 or more, and a lot are thrown away when they really don't need to be. So with Clip validating that they will be still kind of using energy in a good way, able to be maintained, still functioning correctly and not posing a danger, then hopefully those warranties could start to be extended, and we see potential for extended producer responsibility coming in as well.
Okay. Do you advise on how to save money, or does the business do this?
So we would advise on how potential ways that using that electricity data, the business could then save money. But at the end of the day, it is the business that is doing this. Compared to homes, we found that in homes, there's a level of convenience and comfort that comes above other things, but actually from speaking to managers of these restaurants and pubs, we found that it really is a part of their kind of job to deal with this and cut down how much money is going towards energy in these businesses.
Brilliant. That brings us to time. Thank you very much indeed. Well done. Okay, that brings us on to our penultimate pitch in this round of system efficiencies. I'd like to invite Priyanshu from Epicue to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Priyanshu. I'm a co-founder at Epicue. We're a climate adaptation and resilience company protecting workers from heat. Can you remember a time when you felt uncomfortably hot? Now, in that situation, if you had to dig a hole in the ground or shovel gravel for hours on end, that would sound quite difficult, wouldn't it? This is the daily reality of workers in labor-intensive jobs, such as mining or construction, across the world, where high heat leads to significantly increased error rates, and hence is a contributing factor in 92% of exertional incidents that happen on site. One such incident can cost an employer or a company at least 63,000 pounds. But what about the workers? At just 1% dehydration, an individual can feel up to 12% loss of productivity and focus, which is detrimental to their work. Now, this effect compounds exponentially, with 4% or upwards of 5% dehydration being life-threatening. Mechanisms that exist in the market currently look at environmental heat metrics. We've identified a dire need for a personal understanding of how our bodies are reacting to these hot environments. And hence, we've built a fire alarm for human felt heat. We're building a personal protective equipment that is low cost and helps the workers fight against heat stress. The device notifies a user about their dehydration status while informing better hydration habits. Powered entirely by the wearer's sweat, the data is private to the user for unsupervised care. Epicue is a two-part intervention with a permanent casing that houses the electronics and the display that we sell as a one-time purchase to our customers, alongside a subscription model of a recyclable sweat patch that needs to be utilized in order to use the device. We aim to sell it directly to construction and mining companies that employ workers on site. Alongside worker welfare and safety, Epicue also promises protection against heat stress damages as well as productivity losses. To put these facets into perspective, a mid-sized mining company in South America with 500 workers, by utilizing Epicue, can save upwards of £2 million a year. A global heat-stressed market of 321 million workers gives us a market of 6.2 billion to target. Coming on from that, we've identified a much more focused market of South American mining companies, specifically in Argentina, with a good track record of employee health and safety to start with. By being low cost, accessible, and easy to use, Epicue stands at its unique position in the market, with its nearest competitors being several times more expensive. I'm Priyanshu, and along with my co-founders, Orestes and Seb, we're an award-winning team of designers and engineers from Imperial College London and the Royal College of Art. As we progress further in our journey, we'd be onboarding more advisors. So if you're interested in what we're building, please come talk to us after the pitch. We've had the opportunity to be a part of several accelerators where we've gained mentorship and technical knowledge to progress our product further. We've showcased our design in several international design competitions as well as exhibitions. Up until now, we've taken our company from a spark to a testable prototype while building business relationships in the field, gathering letters of intent from mining and construction companies to test forward. That defines our next steps, where we will pilot test our product in the coming summer, finalize our MVP, and take it forward for patentability and patent considerations. We firmly believe that in the face of these rising temperatures, safety isn't a luxury, but a right for all. And with that, thank you. We'd be happy to answer some questions.
Priyanshu, well done, and we welcome your team members on stage for questions now. And let's start with one about the focus on this device being powered by sweat. Why is that?
Well, essentially, the standard in the market right now is core body temperature, which is invasive to measure and also very expensive. EpiQ utilizes sweat because in our application fields it is easily accessible. It is highly correlated with blood in its biomarkers, and it is a much easier thing to track in our applications. Yeah.
Leading on from that, a question in asking whether existing smartwatches, for example Apple Watches, could implement this with software feature builds and therefore pose a significant competitive threat.
So what's happening with the smartwatches and devices similar to that, and we have competitors in the field that work on energy-intensive devices like that, is that they're more expensive to manufacture, and they take that data and they provide it to the employer for employee management of sorts. Whereas we've identified gaps in the industry where most of the hydration-related or heat stress-related management systems work on self-reliance, and hence we're building something for the employees on the field. So the data is kept private, and it's extremely low cost, and it's not built in a way where you can take that data out to other places.
How do you achieve such low costs? What is your profit margin?
So essentially, we're utilizing microfluidics and very rudimentary electronics in how we're building this product, which has an initial startup cost that's slightly higher. But after that, within our manufacturing pipelines, it gets significantly much cheaper. In terms of the profit margin and the final details about that, since we're still setting up all our supply pipelines and finalizing what the product is that we'll then later commercialize, we don't have a very clear idea on that, but we'll develop it as we move forward.
Which mining company in Argentina is on board for your pilot?
So we've actually done a very initial pilot with a construction company in Hong Kong, but the companies that we have in South America that we're in talks to get LOIs from are Rio Tinto and Antofagasta Minerals. Yeah.
Okay. Without policy support, how would you convince companies to pay for this technology when the cost savings aren't very tangible, productivity cost savings that is? Is this a known problem?
There are three things I can say about that. So the first one being there's a lot of traction around employee safety in the sort of face of rising temperatures. So that's gaining a lot of traction, and companies are under a spotlight to sort of bring forward certain changes that might ensure that. Second, legislation is oncoming, whereas we've seen certain countries take up certain new legislative measures that look at enforcing insurances around heat-related accidents a bit more. And we have an in-house cost-benefit analysis calculator that we utilize in our conversations, that we take into consideration the amount of employees they have, in what months would they be working, and the losses they might incur over time due to productivity or injuries that might happen on site. And we use those as measures.
Brilliant. Another question asks about the lifetime of one smart band. What is it?
So the lifetime of the permanent casing that's housing the electronics and the display, we're not entirely sure about that, but it could last any time from maybe 1.5 years to 2 years, which is what the limitation is the display that we're using. wherein the sweat patch that we're using has to be pushed in every shift that an employee is on site. That's why it's giving out in a subscription model to the customers that we deal with.
Fantastic. That brings us to time. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. Okay, thank you for a great range of questions there. And that brings us on to our final pitch of the afternoon. Please give a very warm welcome to Lisa from Textile.
Hi, I'm Lisa from Tazar, and we are on a mission to make products live longer. I want you to think about your last electronics upgrade, and what did you do with your old one? Unfortunately, it likely ended up here because only 17% of electronics are recycled. And I've seen this firsthand for myself, and you can easily imagine the detrimental environmental and health impact of these sites on the environment. This is why the e-waste crisis is invisible to us. Western countries export e-waste often illegally to developing countries. And the EU is stepping up to change this with the EU Digital Product Passport mandate, whereby electronic and electrical product manufacturers will have to embed product traceability and accountable end-of-life management practices. For every new product that is produced, there is an environmental impact from mining, manufacturing, and shipping those products to owners. And there's also the environmental impact of disposing of those products, as you've just seen. That's where, when every product is resold and reused, we avoid the impact of producing a new product and the impact of disposing of one. Let's look at an industry where resale is commonplace. I'm sure many of you own a used car. And the reason why there is increased trust and transparency in buying and selling used cars is because every vehicle has a service history. Introducing digital logbooks for premium electronics. Facilitating resale and trade-in. Streamlining customer support for repairs, maintenance, and service throughout the product's lifetime. Centralizing product information and history, and showcasing environmental credentials such as average lifetime and energy efficiency of that product, helping consumers make more eco-conscious decisions. This previously untapped owner and product data feeds directly back to manufacturers, helping them to make longer-lasting products. These are the industries we are targeting: audio, lighting, and filmmaking equipment. We're starting in audio, and we are growing to filmmaking and lighting sectors over the next 12 months. 12 months ago, when I started the Greenhouse Accelerator, I had a huge concept, a huge vision, but no idea. And the greenhouse was set up with 6 months of discovery, which really helped us to hone in on our go-to-market. Our go-to-market is the audio industry, naturally products with long-lasting lifespans, and there's sentimental value around the consumer wanting to look after these products. We then entered into 3 pilots with industry partners. I've been invited to sustainability steering groups with industry associations. We've just been awarded an accelerator place on Denmark's SoundTech accelerator, and we've also received investment from industry and impact-led investment funds, and we've also secured our first client in the audio industry. It was the benefits of honing in on our go-to-market where we've had network effects. We've also been invited to Europe's largest audio show, HIA Munich, where we are exhibiting there, and we're launching commercially around that event as well. So Ash and I are here today if you'd like to talk to us about our upcoming fundraising round in autumn 2024 and sharing our story as well as career opportunities. And thank you very much, and open for questions.
Lisa, well done, and we welcome your team member on stage for questions. While we wait for audience questions to come in, let's just start with one about why manufacturers aren't doing this themselves. What's stopping them?
So manufacturers that we're speaking to, particularly SME manufacturers, do not have the resources in-house to build their own digital product passport technology. This is where we come in as a strategic partner to enable them to implement this technology, as well as commercially benefit from other areas where we can help with the digital traceability and customer engagement.
And we've had a question in from the audience asking whether you have plans to put this into the domestic market, for example, smartphones.
So we've started with high value, low volume electronics, such as filmmaking equipment and cameras and audio. Smartphones is where we were originally targeting, but we had to pivot because of the high volume, low value nature of it, and we also had the barriers of planned obsolescence. So we decided to go with products which had naturally long lifespans.
And where does your data come from?
The data comes directly from the manufacturer, where they entered into our Asset ID platform. This is verified information that comes directly from the manufacturer, so that every digital logbook has authentic information about that product. And it is structured in our platform and produced into unique digital logbooks.
Which audio products have you partnered with already?
So we've partnered with a company called Care Acoustics, and they produce loudspeakers. And we find that naturally loudspeakers is an ideal product for us in the audio industry, followed by amplifiers and cables.
How about the cost to the manufacturer? Is there one?
There's a cost. We have a SaaS business model, and we've done our research around making sure that our prices are SME friendly, starting at £749 per year for companies that just want to start with us with 100 units, right up to gold packages, which is £20,000 per year.
Okay. What funding do you require to push your product to the next stage of development?
So for autumn time, we're looking at between 1.5 to 2 million. And this will be largely to help us with scaling our product to benefit other value chain actors along the supply chain, such as distributors, retailers, as well as the used marketplaces. It will also be used to scale in internationally to the US.
Okay. And how do you manage tech failure? Are you hiring engineers to fix materials?
So we provide the software solution. So if there's an issue with the software, well, we have a dedicated UK-based dedicated technical support. We obviously have measures in place to ensure that our system's as reliable as possible and as reliable as it can be. In terms of failures to do with the equipment that our product is attached to, part of our service is to provide a direct link to either the manufacturer or their authorized partner for easier servicing and repair.
Okay. How do you plan to compete with established resale platforms, thinking of back market?
We plan to work with platforms such as back market. So we see ourselves as providing authenticated history for products on the resale market. So looking at similar technologies that have worked with the car industry, on Gumtree, for example, where you're able to verify the history of that product, we would actually work with back market to provide authenticity and history to the products that they sell on their platform.
Fantastic. That brings us to time. Well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very well done to Team Tazar there, and you can speak to all of the teams, meet them all in person during our networking session, which is coming up shortly. Well done to all of the teams that have pitched in this session. It is now time to give you just a couple of minutes to score them all at menti.com, once again using the QR code on the screen and the code 76085410. I will be back with you in just a moment's time, and I'll leave you for a moment to get that scoring underway. Okay, it looks like you have managed to get those scores, and if you haven't, please do feel free to continue doing so while we move on. And while we're waiting to count up all of those scores throughout this afternoon, it gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the stage this afternoon's final expert speaker, the director of Undaunted. Please put your hands together for Alyssa Gilbert.
I don't know if I need a mic, actually. I have quite a loud voice. I'm going to put that down. I need a mic. Okay. Sorry. The recording. Okay. Is that all right? All right. So actually, no secret. I'm not here to provide any kind of wisdom. I'm just like the middle act while someone's counting the votes. But credit to all of you. Thank you for staying for the whole afternoon. I hope you found it as stimulating and inspiring as I have. I find it inspiring even though I've seen these people that came onto stage, all of these innovators, from when they applied and they came to boot camp a year ago and they gave us pitches then and we selected them to come on the greenhouse journey. And it's really amazing to see you all here today. So well done to all of you. Your presentations and pitches were amazing. I've heard the buzz of people talking about the amazing quality and caliber of people and ideas and pitches that have been presented today. So really an enormous well done to you, first of all. I think it's been a kind of an emotional afternoon in a way, because one of the things that I felt like all of these companies did is relate their solutions to our everyday lives. So each of you took us through this horrible journey of saying, did you know that this is what the water looks like in the drains? And have you ever thought about how your favorite restaurant is going to go out of business? And have you considered that while I've been speaking, this number of textiles has been sent to a landfill site? And you know, each time you think, oh my God, it's awful. I'm destroying the world. And then by the end of it, you actually know how these people are going to help solve it. So it's really impactful to feel how these solutions are on the horizon. And it gives us what we want to see, which is that hope. We understand that there are enormous environmental challenges, and these solutions give us hope. Some of the things I also particularly liked, and I hope you noticed as well, is that many of the solutions we've seen today have a really positive social impact as well. We have Samudra, who specifically stated that they're creating jobs for farmers through their technology. They're creating more food and impact. And EpiQ, who are actually helping people have an improved safety in the workplace where they wouldn't get that otherwise by leveraging other drivers of those people who are their employers. So it's really power to feel that these solutions are delivering more than just the environmental impact, which is driving our programs here. So that's also something that I found really inspiring. So what's going to happen next with these innovators that you've seen today? They've all given you a specific indication of what the next steps are in their journey. But what we'd really hope is that some of you in this room will be part of those next steps. Here at Undaunted, we're part of Imperial College, and because of our mission, which is to help make London and the UK a great place to start up and scale up your climate innovations, we are deeply connected to the research part of the story and taking innovators from the very beginning of their journey to being ready for their first investment. But after that, whilst we do give some support, we're actually hoping that the rest of the community, those of you in the room and the people that you're connected to, can help them achieve success at scale. So it's really important to us that you take this back, you go back into the room and network at the end of today, you connect those people to your connections. And I'm already, positive for me to hear that the people I've spoken to in the gap, in the breaks, are already thinking about how they can get involved and help support those companies grow. In addition, all of these companies have obviously just been on our Greenhouse Accelerator program. What they've done is in that first year, they've done some customer discovery, started to speak to investors. You can see how much they've evolved their products, but also tested them with consumers and made them, real propositions. But we also now are open for applicants for the greenhouse again. So if you know, or if you are any budding entrepreneurs or innovators, you have another week or so, I think, Jim? Yeah. Okay, until the 25th to apply to the Greenhouse program, and you will get the support that all of these others have had, and you will be on this stage, or your friend or colleague, in a year's time or so. So really encourage you to get people out there applying for the Greenhouse. I would also like to take a moment to thank the people who run the Greenhouse. Jim, who's the head of the Greenhouse, and Nicole up there, who's the program manager, have done a huge amount to help organize the journey and actually organize today specifically. And they've had extra support from Marios, who's working with them, Claudia on the comm side, and everybody else in the Undaunted team. So if we could give them a round of applause, please, for their hard work. Finally, the Greenhouse, which is our accelerator program, is part of Undaunted, which is a slightly larger program. And we're always thinking about what we can do to continue to improve the climate innovation ecosystem in London and globally. We are always coming up with new ideas and starting new programs and projects. We also need your support to be able to do that. So if you're interested in getting more involved in what we're doing to support climate innovation, please do come and speak to me. Some of the new things we're doing, just to give you a taster, but we can always do other things. Some of the new things that we're doing involve searching and working much more closely with the research community to understand if there's any hidden research that somebody forgot to make into an innovation, but could help us tackle climate change or environmental issues. So we've got a 2-year program that we're just kicking off now doing that. And I know many of you might be interested in what is happening in the research space that could eventually end up on this stage and beyond. Similarly, we're also running a project right now, which is called the Retrofit Accelerator, and some of my colleagues are in the room who are running that program, and I've seen some of the startups who are on that program. That's a program that's trying to work with industry to help our startups, once they've left, as a group, to help them scale. So we know that some of those industries out there that need to change are quite traditional, and sometimes they need to be brought together with innovators to understand how they can open the door to those new innovations and help them scale. So again, if you're interested in what happens when they leave and you have connections to the sectors that matter, then please come and speak to us as well. And finally, we're also thinking about how to connect internationally to other parts of the world where climate innovation is happening. So if you do have those connections or you're interested in connecting us or with us from or to other parts of the world, please let us know. You may have other ideas. You may have been inspired today. So please step up and tell us if you are. And if you just came and enjoyed the day and you've gone away feeling a little bit better, that's also sufficient. So thank you again so much for joining us and helping me make the atmosphere. And I'm going to look to the side to see if we now know who our winners are.
We do, and I'm going to ask you to stay on stage to help to award those winners. First of all, just again, a huge thank you to you all for being here, and well done for voting and getting so many great questions in. The teams all did a fantastic job, as Alyssa said, and I am really pleased to now be able to announce the results of your vote, the audience vote. And we will invite each winning team, there are top 3, to come down to the stage to pose for photos and to receive a very special award, which you will see in just a moment's time, which is currently hiding. Okay, starting in 3rd place, please put your hands together. A huge congratulations to Decarbonite. And if you can keep that award going, because they're making their way down from the top floor. So keep that applause going, please. Congratulations, thank you. You can. We will take a group photo, yes. There we go, thank you. Okay, and Alyssa, stay with us as well to award our 2nd highest scoring team. Again, we might have to do a bit of a long round of applause as they make their way down. Please put your hands together. Congratulations for Vuala. Thank you very much indeed. And you will have points deducted for how long it takes you to make it down here. Thank you for keeping that applause going. Well done. OK, that brings us on to first place. And a huge round of applause for our top audience vote winner. Well done to Carbon Cell.
What do you got on that side, and we'll put Liz in podium position.
Okay.
I'll go on that.
Well done. Thank you very much indeed to you all. And you can take your awards off for now. But you will have the chance to meet with all the winning teams and the entire cohort in our networking session, which we are almost over to now. Just a few words to say before we move on. Before you leave, please pledge your support via Mentimeter for any of the teams that caught your interest today. The online form will remain open throughout the rest of this week, so plenty of time to do that still. You are now invited to join us for drinks, you'll be pleased to hear, in the beautiful library and Georgian rooms of the RI, where you will find all of the startups today allocated to standing tables. The only thing we ask is that you please leave your lanyard in the boxes at the exit as you leave, but take your name tag with you so we know who you are. And that just leaves me to say thank you very much indeed for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
So much. You're really well. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. I'll take this off.
You're even greater. Come up close.
Aww.